Yeah, she's gonna a data.
So I think we're going to get started here.
There is not anymore. I'm gonna look at my phone anyways, because 200 pages, I didn't have a script.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the Phoenix City Council meeting of May 19th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Mayor Muehlhofer,
Here.
Councillor Cambrose. Here. Councillor Vermillion.
Here.
Councillor Swatos.
Here.
Councillor Chester.
Here.
Councillor Shaneholtz is absent. Councillor Dixon,
Here.
you have a form.
All right, thank you very much. We'll do the pledges of allegiance. If you'll rise, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to presentations. The first presentation is, I see Mr. Steve Lambert's here from the county. And welcome back again. And we look forward to hearing about the Greenway.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Thank you, councilors. For the record, my name is Steve Lambert. I'm the Roads and Parks.
Is your microphone on?
I thought it.
It's always on. Hear you.
Okay, I couldn't hear you
It's
that
always
well.
on, but maybe just lean a little bit.
Okay. For the record, I'm Steve
Okay.
Lambert. I'm the Roads and Parks Director with Jackson County. And we're here to provide an update. We're trying this again after we had some technical glitches a month or so ago on the Envision Bear Creek process. As I mentioned at that time, the Envision Bear Creek planning effort occurred immediately following, well, within a short time, not immediately, but within a short time following the Almeda fire. And it was really a joint effort between all 5 cities that the Greenway passes through and the county that we have a long-standing partnership with in managing the Greenway. And we look to expand on that partnership to kind of explore options of how we can work with areas off the paved path. Because currently our limitations have been that we just focus on the pavement and the bridges of the Bear Creek Greenway. We wanted to think bigger post Almeda and really look at some vegetation and other options as well. I have Mike Sellinger with Alta Planning and Design on the line today. Mike was the one who was going to present this presentation last time and couldn't log in. I'm going to turn it over to Mike. And feel free to jump in with questions, but I think his presentation will answer quite a bit of those, and then we can get to a discussion at the end. I will say this is not an action item. We're not looking for any action for any councils. We briefed all councils and the board of commissioners on this. We're really just trying to let folks know what the group came up with as far as ideas and thoughts of how we can manage the Greenway sustainably and collectively in the long run, and we'll further flesh those conversations out at a later date. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Can you hear me okay there?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Mayor and councilors, for having me this evening. As Steve said, I'm Mike Sellinger with Alta Planning Design. I was the project manager on the consultant side for the Envision Bear Creek planning project. I'm going to share my screen right now. If I can get approval, please.
You should be good to share.
Okay. Great. Okay. Presentation coming up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, as Steve mentioned, tonight really going to be walking through the project and all the different pieces and things we considered throughout this process, and happy to take questions at any time. Really on the agenda to talk a little bit about the purpose of this project, the public input that went out into it, and then all of the recommendations that came out of it and what some potential next steps could be. So really, the background on the project, as you're probably aware, the Bear Creek Greenway is a 22 or so mile paved multi-use trail linking the cities of Ashland, Talent, Phoenix, Medford, and Central Point. And so for the purposes of our project, we're looking at all the public lands along the Bear Creek corridor from Ashland up to Central Point. This was really a partnership between the 5 cities, Jackson County, as well as ODOT throughout the project, and we'll talk more about that as I go on. The reason this project came to be, 2 major things led to this project. Of course, the devastating fire that along the Greenway, as well as many public safety concerns. We heard many residents that were avoiding it because they did not feel safe on the Greenway. So two big parts that really spurred getting this project together, and lots of community involvement around these two issues. The purpose of the project was to shape the vision for the future of the Greenway, look at those existing challenges and develop a plan that can preserve and improve the corridor for future generations. So really some of the main things we wanted to look at were recreation opportunities. How can we use the Greenway for economic development? How do we manage the natural resources along the Greenway and improve transportation connectivity, and figure out that structure for maintenance, security, funding, and governance. So I'll just briefly touch on some of the existing conditions. There's a lot of detail in the plan if you're interested in learning more about any of the different pieces we looked at. But some of the key themes that were covered were land ownership. I'll show a map in just a minute that shows all the different ownership along the Greenway. Safety and security, as I mentioned, really a lot of public safety concerns, something we wanted to address head on. Fire prevention and mitigation. We don't want it to be a source of fuel for wildfires in the future. Trail development and connectivity. How do we make this serve the community better for people getting from point A to point B? Some of those other themes are looking at the natural resources along the corridor and best practices for vegetation management. What are the economic benefits that the Greenway is providing today and could in the future if it's improved? Also looked at equity considerations along the trail. How does equity vary throughout the different communities and near the trail? As well as trail level of comfort. Which sections of that trail were working really well for people, and which sections had more challenges and would need more improvement. Also looking at jurisdictional coordination. How is the current process of the Joint Powers Agreement working, and what are other ways we could look at coordination? So that existing conditions work, really accumulated in looking at different opportunities and challenges. I probably can't see too much on this map, but we were able to map out a lot of those different opportunities throughout the project area. I do really want to stress the partnership between all the jurisdictions that were a part of this. As I mentioned, we really have this patchwork of ownership of city, county, regional, state, federal, and private lands up against the Greenway. And so it's really important to have all these different stakeholders at the table when we're thinking about the future of the Greenway. As Stephen mentioned too, really collaborative effort between all of the cities and ODOT, and really building on a long partnership of working together on the Greenway, and a lot of work that happened in the post-fire partnership efforts. So while this is a county project, we really looked at it and approached it as a multi-jurisdictional effort. I want to touch on the input, public input and stakeholder input, which really drove this entire process. We had a number of different activities throughout the project, different ways for people to get involved, as well as 3 committees that really steered the overall decision-making and recommendations for the project. The first was a project steering committee, which had a staff and elected officials from each of the 5 cities and ODOT. And this is really who we leaned on for the direct input on key decisions if we had to go one way or another at a number of different junctions throughout the project. We also had a community advisory committee with representatives from all jurisdictions, reflecting lots of different trail users' perspectives, community foundations, and residents from all along the Greenway. And then finally, we had a technical advisory committee with representatives from natural resources, law enforcement, safety, fire and fuel folks, economic development, transportation, and recreation groups. That really helped us when we were digging into technical details and how to approach things like vegetation management and safety. I do want to just point out just how much engagement we had on this project. Do planning projects all over the state of Oregon, and we're usually lucky to get a few hundred people to take a survey at most. We had thousands of responses throughout this project, participating in in-person events and online surveys, as well as a map where people are able to tag important places for them on the trail. And I just want to highlight some of the other engagement efforts. We had a number of partners that helped us, especially reach people that aren't going to normally take a survey or show up to a meeting. One in particular, the Firebrand Resiliency Collective, was really helpful in helping us reach some of the underrepresented voices and communities along the Greenway. Just a little bit about those efforts. We did have a website, an interactive map I mentioned, with hundreds of comments of people telling us what they liked and didn't like along the Greenway. And then turning to the surveys, we had two big surveys. One to really kick things off and try to understand how people are using the Greenway and what some of those current challenges are. As you can see from the graph up here, safety and crime really rose to the top with 84% of people saying that was a challenge of the Greenway when this survey was taken a few years ago. Exercise was the most reported activity. And then that second highest challenge was, or need was maintenance, both environmental maintenance of vegetation and things like that, as well as the physical and capital maintenance of facilities, both on the Greenway itself and adjacent to it. Some of the other things we heard were really people looking for more access points and businesses along the Greenway, more public events and commercial activity to try to activate it and just get more people using it. But overall, you know, I think one of those key findings of that first phase was just how all of the issues facing the Greenway really require everyone coming together and having all the jurisdictions on board with the future.
Mike, can I jump in really quick? One of the things that we
Yeah,
heard
please.
John and Mike mentioned looking at as an asset is I've worked for Jackson County for the past 17 years, been involved in the Greenway in one which shape or form. And we wanted people through this process to be able to see the Greenway as an asset and not a liability. When you drive through Medford, a lot of the businesses are facing away from Bear Creek and the Greenway. That's not a good sign for the Bear Creek Greenway for tourism and eco destinations here, especially when we look to coordinate it with the Rogue River Greenway and potentially have a really destination path that goes from Grants Pass to Ashland. We wanted to hear from the folks, the business owners along the Greenway, and I think one of the best examples of people who are tying into the Greenway from an economic development standpoint is the Clyde's Corner development right here in Phoenix. They're welcoming people from the Greenway. They have bike rentals in that little subject or that little corporate area, et cetera. So that's where we really wanted to kind of start driving this conversation. And we heard that from the public as well.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Really, really good point. And then moving into our second phase of engagement, here's what we came back to the public once we started to have some recommendations and really needed some help prioritizing things and understanding where funding should go to and asking other questions around funding. So, you know, this started with one of the questions of, you know, if you had a hypothetical $100, how would you allocate that to some of these different types of things we're thinking about for the future? You can see, you know, on the chart on the right, a really high portion of people wanted general maintenance and operations to make what we have there better and make sure that vegetation is maintained, as well as support for a number of other things there as well, things like new amenities, new access points, and Greenway resiliency measures. A big part of this was also digging into how do we address security and safety. And we saw a lot of support for a trail ranger program, 46% of people in support of that, a little bit higher than an increased law enforcement presence at 38% as well. But really everyone telling us that they want investment in improving safety and security along the Greenway. Fire prevention also noted as a real priority throughout all of the rounds of engagement. And finally, you know, I think really importantly, we wanted to know if people would be willing to financially contribute for these improvements. And we saw that loud and clear in this question on the right, with 69% of people saying they would support increased spending along the Greenway. And we also dug a little bit into what that could look like and saw a much higher level of support, 80% for creating a taxing district over just increasing local spending. So the responses from this second round really directly shaped a lot of the recommendations that I'll turn to now. So we grouped our recommendations for the future of the Greenway along these 5 categories of maintenance and operations, amenities and enhancements, riparian restoration, capital repair and replacement, and then capital expansion and new access. And we do have a full project list you can find in the Envision Bear Creek plan. And I'll dig a bit more into some of what we really think are the key recommendations. The first really having to do with maintenance and operations is the development of a new ranger program to address safety and security head on. This maintenance and operations funding would also fund a full-time dedicated Greenway coordinator position, as well as continuing a volunteer coordinator. It also covers all of the routine maintenance along the greenway, things like repair and signage replacement, amenities, lighting, etc., as well as that increased vegetation management and fire prevention, which I'll dig into more in just a few minutes. It also covers bridge inspections and repairs. So did want to take a minute to dig a little bit more into what a ranger program would look like. As I mentioned, there was a lot of support for this type of program in the community. We've also seen successful ranger programs in parks and similar trails across the country, and is one way to really help improve that perceived safety and make people feel safer in public spaces. So Greenway Rangers would be specially trained staff members similar to other unarmed park rangers, and they offer a visible staff presence to answer questions and identify hazards or potential programs. So some of their responsibilities along the Greenway would be to just provide information, orientation, or wayfinding for people, to assist visitors in emergencies, act as eyes and ears. They'd be traveling the Greenway all day and be able to identify issues. Also, an education role to enhance users' appreciation of some of the historical, cultural, and environmental resources along the corridor. They'd be able to proactively identify and report hazards and maintenance needs, as well as inform users of standards and park rules if those were being violated, and report criminal activity, as well as provide connections to social services for folks in need. The other one I want to dig into a bit more is vegetation management. Such a core part of this project was, how do we have an effective plan and the right amount of funding for vegetation management to prevent wildfires in the future? And so this is actually a part of the project. We realized we just didn't have quite enough information and really kind of hit pause and dug into the vegetation management plan to figure out the best path forward. And what we ended up doing is a process, an analysis of something called riparian condition zones. And this built off of work from the Bear Creek Restoration Initiative and the Bear Creek Natural Resource Plan, which had done this for a small section of the Bear Creek Greenway, looking at the different needs for vegetation maintenance. But we realized we really wanted to understand this for the entire corridor. So we held a couple different work sessions with those technical stakeholders and other groups, talking to vegetation management groups, fire and law enforcement folks to understand their needs and how we should be thinking about management. And then we did this mapping process to look at the different needs along the entire corridor. What that ended up looking like was splitting it into 4 different condition zones that all have different vegetation management needs. So that first zone at the top would be the most natural area right along the corridor. And actually, I'll pull up a map here from a Phoenix area right around Blue Heron Park. And you can see these 4 colors we would show the different vegetation needs along this very small section of the Greenway. And so that light green right along the creek bed would be the most natural area and be focused on removing invasive species, but keeping it a more natural area. On the other side, when you get into like Blue Heron Park, shown in the orange, then you have a much more managed area with frequent mowing and plantings. And then in between that, you have the darker green and the yellow, which would be different kind of gradients of those 2 zones. So a little bit in between there with some more management than the natural area, but less than more of that park condition. So by mapping the corridor into these 4 different zones, we were able to calculate the different acreage of each of the zones and then come up with different estimates based on that maintenance activities that would be required in each of the zones.
Mike, let me jump in one more time, please.
Yeah.
So I just want to hit on this because it's really important, I think, for folks when we talk about these riparian condition zones. Again, I said I've been doing this for a while with the county. I hear a lot of different opinions, and I always try and see what we all call balance, right? A balance looks different to everybody. There's some in our community that were so traumatized by the Alameda fire that they just want everything mowed to the ground. And when we talk about the Greenway, we're talking about, for the purposes of this project, all the public lands that surround Bear Creek and the path itself. There's others in the community that don't want anything done. They just want it left for Mother Nature to recover the way it is. What we really tried to do in this regard, in regards to recovering and also future management, is to work with our watershed partners, Freshwater Trust, Rogue River Council of Government, or Rogue River Watershed Council, et cetera, and have those discussions with them with the fire officials and with the law enforcement officials to seek alignment. One of the first times I've ever seen all three different disciplines come together and look to seek the same goal. And what we were able to do, as Mike mentioned, was take that little bit that started through a FEMA and EPA grant that the Rogue Valley Council of Governments received to do the Bear Creek Natural Resource Plan. And we were able to expand that to that mapping of the entire corridor. That a mapping strategy that the fire districts were happy with, a mapping strategy that the Watershed Council folks were happy with, and law enforcement as well. So it's important for me just to reiterate that everybody was involved in those discussions at that time, and we really tried to thread the needle.
Thanks, Steve. And so building off that work, we were then able to estimate the cost and leading to an annual estimated cost of around $926,000 for that vegetation and fire and fuel management. As we talked about, each of the different zones would have different types of treatments, but those key activities are going to cover all your things from annual mowing to invasive species removal and control. From there in the project, we really turned into figuring out the best governance structure for the future. And so I know this next slide here is I'm not expecting you to be able to read it, but I do want to just have it up to illustrate what we did is through that vision we got from our stakeholders and community, we mapped out the most important criteria for the future. And that's things like stable funding, accommodating increased efficiency of greenway operations, enhancing perceived and actual safety, supporting local businesses, and ability to apply for additional funding. So that's what we're showing on those criteria on the left. And then we looked at 6 different governance structures, starting with the current joint powers agreement on the left, and looking at things like a county service district, a parks and recreation special district, a nonprofit organization to manage it, a county agreement for transportation facilities, as well as really digging into how other similar multi-jurisdictional trails are managed across the United States. So from that, we were able to map out our criteria and the 6 different potential governance structures and see which we think would be the best to achieve those goals of those criteria. And so the boxes shown in green here are where we think, yes, they would, that type of governance structure would promote that criteria. In the reddish color, it would be no. And in many cases, it kind of somewhat depends on other activities, and that's what's shown in white. But really, the summary there was that there were 2 that really rose to the top of meeting 11 criteria we thought pretty certainly would help promote those. And those were a service district hybrid, as well as a parks and recreation special district. So with both of those high scoring, we took those to our advisory committee of our jurisdictions with staff and electeds to really dig into that. And from there, we came to really strong consensus on that group that the hybrid model, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second, would be preferable to just a parks and recreation special district. And to paraphrase what I think I heard from that committee and why we got to that decision was really about keeping some jurisdictional control along the Greenway. If you just go to the special district, it would be an elected board that was then making all of the decisions along the Greenway. The service district hybrid that we settled on combines a county service district with an intergovernmental agreement between each of the jurisdictions. So that really, from the stakeholders and jurisdictions perspective on the committee, would really still allow the ability to retain control of each jurisdiction's respective section of the Greenway while still working together and finding and getting an improved government structure. Steve, anything you want to mention there before I dig into the steps of what that looks like a little bit?
No, I think you're good.
Okay, great. So this is just a pretty high level part of how that could play out to implement the service district hybrid. It would start with an intergovernmental agreement between all of the jurisdictions, really to articulate the overarching process and work through many of the different details, roles, processes, and expectations before you would move on to getting to a ballot measure to create the district and eventually the formation of an ORS 190 entity. The last piece I'm going to talk about today is around the funding and tax implications of the recommendations. So with our stakeholder group, we looked at 3 potential project lists, first ranging from a very minimal increase to what current levels of spending are on the Greenway to a fully funded scenario of the projects and programs that were identified through the Envision process. And the steering committee was also very clear on this, that they wanted to move fully funded scenario and to really to go after the funding that will allow us to implement all the projects that were desired through the community and process. So from there, working with an economics firm, Eco Northwest, we looked at the cost of all of those projects and came out to an estimated ongoing annual cost of $2.1 million, as well as estimated one-time capital costs of $5.9 million. Those can be amortized over a 10-year period or a different time period, but using a 10-year period, those together come out to a cost of $2.7 million annually. This is a breakdown of those different costs from those different categories that I mentioned earlier. Again, there's the full project list with each of the specific projects within the plan, but you can see here how that breaks down with the annual costs and the one-time capital needs as well. The next thing we looked at was what the taxing district would be for a potential service district for the Bear Creek Greenway. And we looked at 3 different geographies for this. First, the overall Jackson County boundary. Second, the Rogue Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization boundary. And then finally, a smaller Bear Creek taxing district that would cover the 5 jurisdictions along the Greenway, as well as properties in unincorporated Jackson County near the Greenway. And again, working with the stakeholder committee, the recommendation we settled on was the smaller Bear Creek Greenway taxing district. I'll pull up a map of here. And really, I think that the 2 things I heard from the committee on why this one was chosen is, one, we looked at the tax base numbers and what the potential levies would be within those 3 different scenarios. And the vast majority of the tax base falls within this taxing district, within the 5 jurisdictions. So even by expanding it out to Jackson County, the per household cost doesn't actually change that much. And we heard that residents that are living within this boundary are probably going to be more connected to the Greenway. They're going to use it more, be affected more by its management practices than people who are living in further out parts of Jackson County. In terms of what those levy costs look like, again, our economics firm, Eco Northwest, ran the numbers based on property assessed values and with that same funding plan. And it came out to a tax levy of 20 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, with 15 cents of that being for the operations and maintenance annual costs and 5 cents for those one-time capital costs. In terms of what that would look like on the average household, you can see there's a bit of a range depending on the average residential property value. But in Phoenix, that would come out to an average tax bill increase of about a little more than $44.
And I would just add that that's just the numbers you see under average residential property value were from Eco Northwest on the assessed value, not the real market value.
Right.
Oh, wait, can you repeat that?
The numbers you see under the average residential property value were provided by Eco Northwest, our consultants on the economic end of things. That's the assessed value, not the real market value. Some communities have said houses in Ashland or houses in Phoenix are
More than that.
selling for a lot more,
Yeah.
but they're not taxed at that rate. They're selling for more than that.
Okay, wait, I just want to clarify. So I'll just say it. My home's worth $300,000. So it wouldn't be that much.
It's on the assessed value of that house, which is what you're
It changes.
Excuse me?
Doesn't the assessment change too? Never mind.
Yes, it increases 3% a year.
Yeah,
But your value of your house has increased much greater than 3% a year.
Right, okay.
So your assessed value, as a general rule, is always, excuse me, it will be lower than your real market value. That's why your taxes continue
Okay,
to.
well, that's fine, but I just want to know, so like, so let's just do, can we do other numbers? So if my house is $300,000, what would that probably be then? Do you know?
Well,
I don't.
Do you wouldn't know?
Your house off the top of my head.
But, so weird, it's confusing. So we could, yeah, because, but why didn't you do like so it's on assessed value? Okay.
Houses generally sell for quite a bit more than they're assessed, I guess is the bottom.
Okay, so I have to look at I'm sorry, I'm a new homeowner, so I would have to look at what it was assessed at to see how much property tax I would pay.
Correct. Yeah, this is the average for the city of Phoenix is 226. Your specific house, you could go onto Jackson County's website, the Jackson County.
I'm just trying to get an idea because I know that is low, because I look on Zillow all the time. It's like, nobody's house is worth that much.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, sorry.
No,
And
you're good.
Steve, is this current, at current assessed values? Is this what?
That
the
was
numbers
about a
are based
year
off
ago.
of? Okay.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Okay, thanks, sorry. I said I wanted to understand it.
Sure. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, that is really where I wanted to wrap up here. And yeah, I'm not a tax expert, but some of those same statewide measures that cap the increase at 3% also lowered assessed values to a certain year. So just generally, those assessed values are much lower than the real market value. But yeah, that is exactly where I wanted to wrap up. So love to take any questions or comments.
Okay, well, let's start around the room here. Larry, do you want to start? You have questions? We'll move around before I.
didn't have any questions.
Well, I have tons.
It's all good.
Yeah, okay, ready?
You're next.
So, last time you came and we couldn't do it because of the thing. So how, out of the 2,000 survey responses, again, you told me last time, I forgot, how many people are in this county?
By my recollection, don't quote me on it.
That's fine.
We're looking at about 220,000.
When you say that's a good like maybe that's a good survey response for you guys, but that doesn't sound very representational of the county to me. So 220,000 is the population, and I know some don't live on the outskirts.
And keep in mind, some of those are children as well, right? So.
Okay, maybe I can look it up on my phone right now, but I just think that that's not very representational of this county. How did you send out the surveys?
They were sent out with all the partners that Mike mentioned on.
Sorry, what?
They were sent out with all the partners that Mike mentioned on the screen.
Okay.
And they were advertised at many local businesses in the area. We had signs on the Greenway that really put a large emphasis on advertising the survey. The survey was open on the website for quite a while, so it wasn't just like a mailer, it was an online survey. So we really did put a robust effort into it. And I totally hear your concerns, and I was thinking about your concerns after you mentioned that the last time.
Thank you.
But I don't know how to address those concerns because I do think that
I have some solutions. I just don't feel, I don't know, what's the word, I think, comfortable voting or like passing this through or whatever you're asking for. I'm not sure yet because you said we're not asking for a vote, but I don't feel comfortable doing that unless you have some more open sessions that all the public could hear what you just said.
Mhm.
Because this is important information. And if it's taxes, I would, because I never saw the survey, and that's just my own personal view.
Mhm.
But, and then also, I walk on the Greenway a lot and I've never felt safety issues at all. And that's a lot of money.
Mhm.
And also I'm wondering, why can't Jackson County just pay for it? They get a lot of money. And so I'm wondering why that's not, don't they have money? And sorry, I just threw a bunch at you. But I mean, who do you work for? Jackson County?
I do.
Okay.
The Roads and Parks Director for Jackson County, yeah.
So I'm just concerned as to why, and then what if okay, how about this? I'll still shut up. What if we don't pass it? What if we say no and all the 4 other cities say yes?
If we got to the point,
Yeah.
we were asking for this to go out to the public for a vote, because the public would ultimately vote on this. It's not something that would be passed by the city council.
Public's gonna vote on this?
Exactly, yeah. We would be asking for at some certain point of time, if all of the jurisdictions got on board, and by way I say all jurisdictions, that's all 5 cities in the county, would be to enable us collectively to put it on the ballot so that voters in this taxing district could have the opportunity to say yay or nay.
Okay,
Like, anytime we tax the public, we have to ask the public to vote on that.
yeah, so you're presenting this to me, you're presenting this to us to say that you want it to be on the ballot?
No.
Say,
We're
sorry.
we're just giving you a rundown of the recommendations of this process.
Why aren't you doing it more for the public? Like, I'm just one person.
We haven't got to that point yet.
What are you?
If we decide to go that route, yes. So where we're working right now, you've peppered me with a lot of questions, so I'm trying to
No, sorry.
put my way through here and answer the
Sorry.
questions. Where we're going right now is we've wrapped this project up in the last several months. We're now working with staff at all 5 cities and the county and ODOT, because ODOT owns a lot of land on this property as well, on the Greenway as well, to develop an IGA that
What's an IGA?
intergovernmental agreement
Okay.
that charts the course for, hey, do we want to work through this process? Do we want to continue this process? Do we want to cut ties now and say, hey, this was a great recommendation, but we're not interested? So far, all jurisdictions have said in past forms that they want to continue these conversations. So we're working through this agreement, getting started on this agreement to say, hey, this is what the process would look like should we choose to continue these conversations. That's as far as we've gotten. We haven't asked for any actions from anybody, and we haven't taken this to the public. This was a robust effort with the public when we were going through this process. I understand that you don't have any security concerns on the Greenway, but believe me, there are a lot of people that have security concerns.
I think Phoenix has security concerns. There might be further along in Medford, but on our part, it's very small. And I don't think that we have very many security concerns.
But I would respectfully just respond to that, Counselor,
That's fine.
that when we talk about the Greenway, we talk about the Greenway holistically. Because residents in Phoenix travel south to Ashland, they travel north to Medford, they experience all sections of the Greenway, and so do Medford residents and Ashland residents. So what we've been trying to work towards for many, many years through partnerships, and what this whole process was geared toward, is creating a Greenway where when the users use that Greenway, they don't see these imaginary jurisdictional lines where one level of service just completely changes because that's what that jurisdiction has resource-wise to be able to maintain services. It's a uniform Greenway.
Yeah, I understand that. But when it comes to,
Customers.
property taxes, I agree. I agree with you. It should be that way. Yeah, I agree. But when it comes to taxes, it's a tricky thing. And then also, yeah, okay. I just would like to see from you guys how you're going to get public input, how public education, like ramped up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think is very important.
Should we decide collectively to move forward? I agree with you 100%. There would be a ton of public education and a ton of public outreach needed. We're not ready to go towards that right now because we're still trying to figure out where do we go from here. I do want to answer in regards to why doesn't Jackson County pay for this?
Okay.
It's not, the Greenway passes through, every jurisdiction owns land on the Greenway. Phoenix owns lands that the Greenway passes through. All the other 4 cities do. ODOT owns a lot of land. Jackson County owns the land. Well, I just respectfully would ask, why would Jackson County pay for something that goes through all of our lands and benefits all of our citizens?
Isn't Jackson County for all of us?
Yes, but we have resources limitations as well.
I would, yeah, and I'd be interested to know what your budget is and what you're spending. I could look that up, but yeah, I'd be interested to know.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because we all have budgets, yeah.
If I can get you any of that information. Our parks program, for example, is self-funded. We don't receive any general tax support for our parks program. We operate strictly off the user fees that folks pay at our parks and a couple other dedicated fees from the state.
Yeah, and I just want to make clear that I'm totally for the Greenway and riding on it and using it. I love riding my bike on there. It's so fun. I just haven't noticed, and maybe I'm not going in the certain area. I just haven't noticed from Phoenix to Ashland any security issues, but that's my own personal, I don't know.
Yeah.
So maybe other people have.
I would add one more comment. We have done a lot on that in the last couple of years. The Jackson County
Yeah, I've heard that, yeah.
Sheriff's Office has been out in full force. Medford PD has been out in full force. I know Phoenix PD has been out in full force. All the jurisdictions have put a lot of emphasis into that post Alameda. So it definitely, I will agree with you, is looking a lot better than it did 4 or 5 years ago in regards to the security.
Okay, well, let's continue.
Steve,
Plenty of questions.
in the hybrid one, you said that each jurisdiction it'll go on the ballot and see if people want them for their jurisdictions. So if one or the other doesn't agree to that, what happens with the plan?
We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, if we get there.
Okay.
I think a recent example of that, don't quote me on this because I am just the Rosen Parks director, not the sheriff, but I believe we crossed that bridge with a jail levy a few years ago where one of the jurisdictions didn't want to sign on to that and others opted not to move forward with that. my gut tells me we'd probably be in a very similar situation if that happened with this project, just because the Greenway does pass through all of our jurisdictions and we want a collective effort on it.
Okay. Also, one of the models said that having park rangers, unarmed park rangers, how will enforcement of problems happen with those park rangers? They still call PD in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just like in our county parks and in state parks, right, where all of our park rangers are codified code enforcement officers. So we can enforce codes, but they
Okay.
can't enforce the law.
Okay.
Again, balance, right? There's some folks that would love to see 500 law enforcement officers on the Bear Creek Greenway. There's some that would like to see none. I think what we heard from a lot of folks in the community is, hey, we want some eyes and ears and some presence, but we're not so sure. We want to be able to recreate and have fun with our families. We're not so sure we want law enforcement on the Greenway. This is a conduit for folks that are trained in dealing with issues like in our county parks and in our state parks to be able to keep their eyes and ears open and be able to provide that connection to law enforcement should it be needed.
Okay. Okay. I know crime had been the number one thing when you talk about the Greenway. It was crime, like you had there. The funding for this study, did that come from grants from?
That came from Jackson County. That was $300,000 that the Board of Commissioners post Alameda Fire said, hey, we want to have a community conversation on where do we go with the Bear Creek Greenway post fire.
I think it's such a gym waiting to happen, but that security is the main thing. But what a thing it is. Yeah.
Can I ask how many, do you know the reports in Jackson County that have happened on the Greenway? Like how many reports have been filed that have been like safety concerns?
I could get you that information, Counselor. I don't have it right now. I would give you false information if I.
I appreciate that. And then also I think like how you feel around, and I'm guessing people are talking about the homeless, how people feel around the homeless maybe is a different reality of what is the safety concerns that are happening on. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm getting at?
I agree with you 100%, but
So I would like to know in your report, when you move forward, or if you move forward, how many safety issues have happened on the Greenway?
yeah, I'd be happy to, I'll dig that information up. We have it. We've found that information before on doing research projects. We have that information regarding fires too. So I'll give you that as well.
Because I think perception versus reality is sometimes very skewed.
I don't disagree. I think we had some pretty robust conversations on that with the project steering committee. And I think a lot of us feel that reality is perception sometimes, right? And it's really hard to change that opinion where you're trying to get somebody to bring their family on a trail that they don't feel safe on. There's a million things we can do, but maybe some lighting is what they'd like other presence out there from park rangers, et cetera. So I agree with you. The numbers do not, in my opinion, paint the Bear Creek Greenway as a dangerous facility, but there are some in our community that I value their opinions that feel that it is.
I just would like you to go back though, because you keep saying you talked about you got these survey responses. Again, I just want to reiterate, you only got 2,000 out of the 220,000. I don't think that's very representational, and that's fine. That's fine. But you say it as if that was like a majority of the population, and it's not.
I hear you, and I'm not going to argue about that.
Okay.
It's really hard to get public opinion. If the city of Phoenix can get 100% returns on their community surveys, I applaud you really well.
I'm not saying 100, but I'm saying 50.
I will be happy for you if you do that.
That's our dream. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving here. Any comments?
Sure. I have some comments. I have for not many, but a few decades ridden on the Greenway since it's been in existence. I ride my bike, I walk my dog. I've been from end to end. I don't feel unsafe on it, but I would say that there are a couple places where it gets narrow or overgrown, and a couple spots under the bridges in Medford or Central Point section where it feels like there aren't places to get away if you needed to, if you were feeling unsafe. But I think that the people who hang around Hawthorne Park are more interested in the services offered in Hawthorne Park. I don't think they're attacking people walking on the Greenway or anything like that. Again, it's perception a little bit, and maybe your own comfort level with people who are different from you, or have different living situations. And we did go to Rogue Retreat recently and had a tour there, and they do have service people who monitor the Greenway regularly to assist people who need housing and such. So I feel like that's kind of actively being paid attention to already. The Rangers program, I think, is a great idea because it includes volunteer programs, and you could involve the schools and people and seniors and anybody who's interested in the parks and the Greenway. So yeah, I'm for it. But again, the population and the people who live here need to decide if they want more tax.
Okay, Virginia, anything?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Wait, one more thing, sorry. And then if it's 22 miles and you have a full-time ranger, so that ranger is monitoring like on a bike? Like, how does that look?
No, it would be a vehicle.
On the Greenway?
I've driven the Greenway a million times. You can't do all the work on the Greenway from a bike.
Okay, so they would be driving on the Greenway. A vehicle would be driving on the Greenway, looking for things that might be dangerous.
And talking with folks and everything else. Yeah, we do it now. That's how we manage the Bear Creek Greenway, is by driving small vehicles on it.
Okay,
The Greenway actually serves a super important role in that regard, as it's a fire break. You have 10-foot paved, and then you have 10 feet of maintenance on either side of it. So you effectively have a 30-foot fire break between I-5 and all our populations. But it also is all the bridges on the Greenway are vehicle rated. So you have a very easy, quick access for law enforcement and for fire officials currently. So yeah,
so they'll have a fire thing on their vehicle as well?
I don't know about that. I was pointing out that fire officials drive on the Greenway now.
I was focused on the vehicle that you were going to hire to be on the Greenway. And so I thought you were saying.
Yeah, that's way over here on the timeline. We'd have to work all that out.
Okay, because I'm just thinking if you called the police, it might be the same, but whatever.
Okay. Larry.
I point out too that safety, it just has nothing to do with assaults and such. My wife and I walk the Greenway. Dogs, bicyclists that go too fast, or the electric bikes, and they don't tell you if you're coming or not. So we're constantly looking backwards, trying to figure out who's going to hopefully avoid us. So it's more of speed and cyclists not notifying walkers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you, counselor, and we've had conversations. Again, we're just one manager of the Greenway, right? All the cities can set city ordinances, the county can set county ordinances for what type of behavior is allowed on their sections of the Greenway. We strive for uniformity. We've had conversations in the past on, hey, how can we, again, we don't want people to cross that imaginary jurisdictional line and all of a sudden a different set of rules apply to them. With the advent of e-bikes and micromobility devices, that's changed. That's a game changer. And that discussion needs to be had.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I'll be short.
Brief, please.
In 2001, we've talked before, but in 2001, my office and I basically put together the Greenway ordinance as it is. Now, this is going to help kind of explain some of the things for them. And at that time, I talked with each of the different city attorneys, and we took that ordinance and we uniformly adopted it throughout all the different, from Ashland to Central Point. But that was 2001. And I will admit that, although that was a lot of fun, I've learned a lot about ordinances since then. And it's really, it's not up to date. It has a lot of things in here that we're talking about, but what has been said here, it's a lot more than just crime, or assaultive type crime. The fire itself was a concern or an issue, and there is a lot of dangerous activity that occurs, plus the sewage and other types of things. So those are all uniformly addressed, and Medford changed it. But part of the problem, and the ordinance is actually designed in a way that anticipated a management intergovernmental agreement in 2001. So the problem, though, is that each city needs to be able to provide enforcement, or there needs to be a uniform enforcement, because it's all going to be different. If you don't, if these ordinances or each city starts doing different things. So it is important to have a uniform ordinance. It's also very important to have uniform training among all the different officers that are going to be there, which this ranger group sounds like they are going to be reporting and talking the same language about, what ordinance or what particular issue is being violated or is of concern. So it really does make a lot of sense from a standpoint of enforcement, to be able to have those rules and to be able to determine a group of people to be able to determine what rules are going to be there and how often they need to be updated, so that some cities update, some cities don't. City of Medford has, but I can tell you what cities haven't. And so, it's from that standpoint, that's one of the reasons you have this conversation going on right now.
Yeah, and I would, part of the issue, and Mr. McGeary hit on uniformity, is a great example of that. Outside of the ordinance process, the Board of Commissioners passed an order every few years following the Alameda fire and now delegated that authority to me. And I will be doing this on June 1st, where during the ODF declared fire season on county-owned portions of the Greenway in our county jurisdiction, you cannot venture off the 10-foot paved path. We don't want people wandering off, potentially smoking in the dry brush, et cetera, starting a wildfire. City of Phoenix passed that same ordinance. Unless you know whose property you're on this patchwork quilt of property that goes from point A to point B, it's very hard for the public to understand what they can and can't do. And it's really hard for our law enforcement partners to be able to enforce that. That patchwork quilt applies to everything, whether it's vegetation management. We can do some mowing on 5 acres of our land. Exactly.
Trash.
But if
Yeah.
other property owners don't have that ability, it doesn't help us and it doesn't get us anywhere. So
Yeah.
applying that blanket of uniformity to everything that we do on the Greenway. That's the goal.
Okay. I'm going to make some comments. I think the most dangerous thing on the Greenway now is not homeless, it's e-bikes. I've gotten so much feedback on e-bikes that, especially in our area of the Greenway, we have so much going on positively that homeless is not an issue in our area because we have the Save the Phoenix Wetlands group that's going in there with multiple projects going at simultaneously to work on the area between the Greenway and Bear Creek to clean it up. No one's going to be sleeping in there. Kids are going to be in there playing. We have something called the Blackberry Academy. A woman's taking little kids out there teaching about the outdoors. There's so much activity, positive activity that we have here that the perception, I think, of many people for our Blue Heron Park area is that the Greenway is wonderful. We don't see a problem for those people that are using that facility. When we were at Rogue Retreat, they said that there are no homeless communities anymore. And I said, no. And they said, no homeless communities on the Greenway. And they said, there's just a few people and the livability team goes out right away and talks to them. So the perception that I got is that there is no problem at all in Medford. Now, maybe that's not the correct statement. That I want to know what the correct statement is. And like Nicole was saying, we need facts on the number of arrests that are going on now. I think it's almost down to zero. Personally, that's my impression.
Yeah.
No, it's not correct. We need to be updated on that. But I was told we're just talking about the private lands, all the trash on them. How do you get that trash off? Because that's a perception that is negative.
Mhm.
But the e-bike thing, I was at a Ashland City Council meeting. You were there and they were talking about e-bikes. They're going 60 miles an hour now on the Greenway. And we have little kids playing on the Greenway at Blue Heron Park. And we're afraid someone's going to get hurt. So those are the type of issues that we are facing right now.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is unincorporated areas. They have to buy into this as well. I mean, because we want everyone to buy into it. It's one of those things. We don't want our rate to go up from what you quoted here because someone else is not playing the game. So they would have to buy in. And I think that's going to be a challenge. I really do.
So a couple things.
Yeah.
I'll start with the homeless, the road retreat statement.
Yeah.
As I mentioned to Councilor Suedos before, the homelessness issue on the Greenway is far better than it was 4 or 5 years ago. A lot of effort's been put into that. I can guarantee you that the statement Road Retreat told you is false. There are camps on the Bear Creek Greenway currently, in sections of the Bear Creek Greenway. That's inevitable, in my opinion. You're talking 1,000 acres of land to be able to make the statement that, on 1,000 acres of public property from point A to point B, there's not a single camp. That's a pretty bold statement to make. And
That's what they told us.
I factually disagree with that statement based off of information that I have from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Now, hopefully that will be the case in a few weeks, right? As we start looking at going into fire season, but it does ebb and flow with conditions.
Okay.
In regards to the city of Phoenix and residents here, I applaud the city for the great work that the city's done. I think collectively we've done a lot of great work through our joint powers agreement. We just slurry sealed the entire Phoenix section of the Greenway. It looks like brand new this last year with collective money from all 6 jurisdictions on that as well. I think again, going back to the perception issue, a good portion of Jackson County residents drive by the Bear Creek Greenway in the Medford section and they look down from the freeway to this property that's facing kind of Riverside and back, right? And they make those judgment calls on whether they feel safe or don't feel safe using that path based off of what they see from the freeway. That's, I think, just a fact that we all have to battle. I hear it daily, not daily, that's an exaggeration, but I do hear it weekly from folks that say, I don't feel safe on the Greenway. And I'm constantly beating in their head that, hey, what you see in one portion of the Greenway is not representative to the whole 22.4 miles of the Greenway. There are different conditions. I agree with you. We want to get them to a point where exactly what you said there's a lot of good people coming out to the Greenway. Those good activities and those good folks enjoying the Greenway are what make the bad actors feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So that's the goal.
They
Is to
leave.
just continue to create an environment through all of these different techniques that we've talked about today, where increase of use on the Greenway continues to climb and folks find a different place to take part in those kind of activities.
Okay. Do you have another? No.
Well, I was just,
Sure.
there's a lot of bike paths in Oregon, so I was wondering, is there another county that does this?
The exact model that we're
That
recommending.
has full-time security on a path, on a bike path?
Mike and his team analyzed several different jurisdictions and kind of the governance models. I don't know if they actually looked at another jurisdiction in the very beginning on this specific park ranger program.
Yeah, or like, just like,
Let's take the ONC trail over out of Klamath Falls. It's a state parks facility. They have state parks rangers that work on those types of paths, et cetera.
Okay. All right. I think that's it. Yes, city manager.
Yeah, I was just gonna give a shout out to Raul. Everybody probably knows him. He's our code enforcement guy and he does a great job of keeping an eye out for that area. And as Steve mentioned, we're getting into fire season where we're going to make sure that we don't have folks wandering off the path just because of fire season, as well as still have a lot of dead trees that are very dangerous. So that's kind of operationally, I think, looking at the ability to reduce the amount of fuel load in this area is something that, whether we do something like this or some other way, is important, because I think we all experienced the Alameda fire and saw what happened, and anything we can do to try to reduce that fuel load I think it's a really important and part of this proposal. So
A big part of this proposal. The last parting words that I'd leave you with is, again, I'm just going to say I've been doing this for a while, and the Bear Creek Greenway, if you think what your neighbors aren't doing on the Bear Creek Greenway isn't going to come home to affect you at some point in time, I would ask that you think twice, because the things that happen on different communities on the Bear Creek Greenway, they might get dealt with, but those types of behaviors pop up somewhere else. And many times I've seen it pop up on different sections of the Greenway. It ebbs and flows.
I have a friend that lives on the Greenway. Her yard backs up to it, and 3 years ago, calling, there's a fire on the Greenway because someone was doing a warming fire, and they said they're allowed a warming fire, and so she has this constant threat of fire right behind her place. She lives in a mobile home park. And so at least some of that camping is happening unless they've cleared it out.
Okay,
I was gonna
Yes,
make one
one
sec.
more.
I own an e-bike, but I would be in support of banning e-bikes. Just because I take kids out there and, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, you don't know what they're gonna do.
yeah, no, it's
Some guy-
dangerous.
So
Yeah.
that's just my last statement.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. All right. All right.
Wait, I want to say, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Hi.
We're gonna move on. I think we had a great discussion, and all the issues came out on the table. So that's really great. All right, let's move on to the Phoenix Arts Council. Becca Blake is going to come up and speak with us a bit. Welcome, Becca.
Yes, thank you. I have my council member from the Phoenix Art and Culture Council, Vanya Kruger, joining me, as well as a local artist, Zavi Penitent. Hi.
Welcome.
And I'm Becca Blake. Thank you. Okay, excellent. Okay, Christy from Phoenix Elementary School. Excellent. Thank you for being.
All right.
Great. So I'm Becca Blake, and I want to give you just a little background about me. I have a degree in fine art. I also have a degree in innovation and leadership and business administration, certified in nonprofit management. I also work in the position of grantor with county and state agencies. But I'm also an artist, so I understand the grantee aspect of it as well. And so Al asked me to chair this new Art and Culture Council. It's a real honor. Thank you so much. Who's in charge of my slides? Am I? Oh, okay. So I just. Space bar or just space bar? Okay, thank you. I also have a small marketing and promotion art and culture company. So in working with the Jackson County Cultural Coalition, I understand art and culture to be our collective norms and values. But also we're looking at all different types of arts, heritage, and humanities. So that's what I choose to present to you. And I have in the agenda packet here 4 different proposals. Only 2 of them are included in the budget that I'm going to pitch to you at the end of the slides. And I just wanted to share with you about this free gallery that's part of my little marketing and promotion company. I want to give a big shout out to the Foodery for being such a great sponsor and welcoming this project. We actually sold 4 out of the 5 pieces of art in this little gallery this weekend at our event. So I'm super excited about that. It's art in an odd place in a public food court, and we're bringing art to the people. So it is public art. I've been working closely with Jack Langford. He has an industrial studio, gallery, and foundry here in Phoenix. And it's real treasure in our community. This is the only foundry within 200 miles, a working foundry. And he's such a community-centric guy, a fantastic resource here. And this space has been an incredible community space and networking space. So I'll be speaking about Jack more in the future. What I've been offering through his space is also promoted by my promotion company are these group events over the last year, and we have another one coming up in September. Currently, we're featuring Neoteric. We're supporting local artists and also getting to know local organizations that have important causes that they support, and bridging these gaps between arts and community, and giving voice to certain artists in the community. But also I've been making really important networking connections through these events that are helping me with the Art and Culture Council. And I want to make sure to invite you to a welcome Mixer, the Phoenix Art and Culture Council is a part of the Phoenix, Oregon Chamber of Commerce. And so we're having our first welcome mixer for our council this Friday, 6:30 at Langford Art Gallery. And then the next day on Saturday, it'll be followed by an artist panel. So if you want to hear directly from some of our really contemporary established artists in the region, or sharing their insight about what they experience and how they feel they could be better supported in our region and why it's important, what they're doing is important. That's an opportunity on Saturday, the 24th, and it's going to be followed by a bronze pour. So that'll be fun. One of the things we're working on now that I have a team that's come together from doing these group events at Langford's, we're going to have a monthly art walk. Like I've stated before, we've established second Friday as the art and culture day of our month. So the second Friday of every month, Phoenix will have an art walk. We finally have a little team together, and we have some businesses that are excited to participate. And so I think we're going to aim for August to be one of our launching months for that. And some of the budget that I'm proposing will support the monthly art walk. This is a proposal that's come through. And I think this we're not asking for any financial support at this time, but I wanted to introduce it to you because I think it would be a nice complementary piece for an art walk to have some artful banners. We have our neighboring towns have different initiatives they're leading in public art. Such as wrapping trash cans or utility boxes or painting doors, and I thought this would be a really interesting way that we could have a call for submissions. Local artists could submit their work. We could have a panel, decide on whose works will be supported for first round. We could have an exhibition of the work. And then when the funding comes through, we could introduce these banners into our downtown landscape, cityscape, and perhaps incorporate it with, positioning them in places where the art walk will be significant on a routine basis. One of the projects I am looking for funding at this time, oops, I put 3 O's in Foodary. I'm known for typos. And my L is, how did this happen? Okay. So yeah, this is a project at the Foodary. There's a really incredible retaining wall that the Foodary has presented as an opportunity for public art, and it is public facing. So I did want to present this to your group. I have put in a proposal. My proposal was accepted by the Foodary to have an identity map mural. And the idea is to have, a series of maps, kind of like a timeline, maybe include some representational imagery of the local ecosystem and, notable figures over time, and have that progression towards this staircase that enters into the food court. So again, that's in the agenda packet. You can find out more about that or ask me questions. But that is one of the projects that I'm hoping that a budget from this year would go towards supporting this particular mural. A second really exciting proposal that we've had come in is in combination with a local school, Phoenix Elementary School. Go Junior Pirates. And the incredible Zavi Penitent here, international artist, who's just a local, incredible rock star here that we have. And he's willing to lively up our public art space and engage with the students there and teach them and inspire them about murals. And I have them here with me today so they can share more details. Should I have them speak now or afterwards?
Yes, why don't you go ahead and have them speak? Okay. I know Eric Heron is here and he
okay.
wanted I'm going to do, Eric, because I know you have to leave. I'm just rearranging things. Just quickly, he wanted to make a few comments about the wall. And I'm going to, please do that so you can move on and,
It is getting close to my bedtime.
yeah, I know.
I gotta go pick a daughter up,
Yeah,
so at a soccer thing. Thanks, Al. Yeah, I'm in support of this mural, on the backside and just art in general in Phoenix. I think it's a great way to build culture, to bring the community together. We have provided the free space with, for the art, and, this week you guys had a nice little, art show with some of the other nonprofits, and the more we can encourage this, art flows through every generation, kids to the elderly. So we all appreciate it. And I think any way that Phoenix can support more of this is good for the community as a whole. So thank you, Becca, for leading the charge, and look forward to hearing what you guys have to say too. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Eric. Okay. Now you can take off. Okay. Good.
Hi, I'm Lavanya Kruger. So this art project is near and dear to me. I was a Waldorf school teacher, been into the arts my whole life, an artist for myself. My son went to the elementary school. He's now in the Talent Middle School. And over the years, I've asked him, like, what kind of art are you doing in class? And there's not a lot of art curriculum going into a public school. And so I thought, well, how can I bring more art to the school? And I thought, well, Zavi is an amazing artist. I know him. Let's paint the town red. Let's put something there to inspire these kids. And I've been working with Shauna at the elementary school, the principal there. She's super excited about this, is on board, ready to go. We've already started a GoFundMe page. We're going to try to get this rolling as soon as possible. And what we want to do is use this mural as a Kickstarter to inspire the kids to do their own mural. So we've already established quite a few locations within the school that we could have, like, every year that they paint and they do a new mural. So it'll be an ongoing thing, learn how to do like a paint by numbers. Christy here is going to help implement all of these things. And we're just really excited to kind of get the ball rolling and bring a little bit more art to the school outside of the regular curriculum every day. And I think it's going to be a good thing to add.
Awesome. Okay, go ahead. Let's wait till they finish. You have more?
Yes.
Go ahead, please continue.
And if you, if I've ever driven down in Medford and seen the Kids Unlimited location, this is who painted it. So he knows what he's doing.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Zavi, would you like to say anything?
I didn't come prepared to speak.
But he is willing to paint any surface you want.
Yeah. You don't have to say anything. We see your art. All right.
Oh.
Okay, great. Another proposal that I'm presenting to you is just an idea that we're having in discussion right now in our council about offering some kind of cultural space that's not only aesthetically pleasing, but encourages kids and families to engage with their environment. Unfortunately, Ryland Mount had to leave, but he was here and he wanted to present with you and I'll have him back. This is something that'll be an ongoing conversation, but I just wanted to introduce it to you this time around and give you a kind of feel for how I'm thinking in a bigger picture of, while we're developing some of these really special spaces here in Phoenix, maybe leave room for thinking about something like this for families. I think this would be an incredible attraction and create a destination. Ryland can tell you himself more clearly about, the dynamics of how rare it is that there are parkour parks here in Oregon, and how incredible this would be for not a feature, not only for Southern Oregon, but for the state of Oregon itself, and really put Phoenix on the map in some ways. So this is not part of the budget ask at this time, but the two murals and the art walk are incorporated in that. And so here's the budget. Sorry, I don't know why this isn't lining up properly, but we're requesting for this year from 2025 to 2026 10,000 where we would have, this would give us 200 a month at least towards promotional hospitality items for the art walk and for some of these community engagements. I've been actually doing out of pocket or with some sponsorships that I can drum up locally. So that would be wonderful to be able to have a little bit of a budget to work with. And again, 4,000 of this could go towards jumpstarting these mural projects. We'd like to have some type of public art events as a regular annual project. Maybe have some that are biennial, every other year and become known for these certain events. We're thinking perhaps either participation in the current parade or some other type of parade. And then another type of art engagement event. I know Al had mentioned my hot air balloon idea. If that doesn't pan out, something similar, that we could have a minimal budget but it would be really fun, family oriented art experience. Supplies, that's going to be a general item on the budget annually. This year, we're thinking it would be wonderful to have a PA system and some folding chairs and a folding table, because right now we have to scrape it together, see who we can borrow them from, and renting them just doesn't make sense. I do have a place where we could store them at Langford's. And so annually in the future, we'll have to think about maintenance. Right now, we don't have to, but I do want you to know that in my time on the Ashland, City of Ashland Public Arts Advisory Committee, I became very familiar with the importance of having a budget for maintenance and thinking ahead about maintenance when proposals come in. So I promise you I'll be very thorough in considering, that piece in particular before I bring any proposals to you. But for now, we don't have a need there. And then, there are always unplanned expenses. So there's an extra 400 to work with. So that's my total for 10,000. And I think that would be really a wonderful start for Phoenix. Right now, we're citizen-led, and I've been reaching out to local businesses to sponsor and nonprofits to support, in other ways. But we really could use some help from the city as well. And so again, I really want to make sure to invite you to Langford's this weekend. We'll have the business mixer on Friday. We'll have the artist panel and a bronze pour on Saturday.
Okay.
And do you have any questions?
Any questions from?
What ideas do you have of where the art walk would be? What area? Through the Foodery, through?
Primarily downtown, right? And we'd like to have a map, a brochure, and that's part of the budget expense. Some of it would be digital. Ideally, we'd have a digital kiosk, downtown. People can touch screen and they can access all of that. But for now, we're relying on maybe the chamber website or my Helio website to give some information and some printed materials, which costs a little bit of money. But it would be a map, and that map might be adjusted monthly depending on who's participating. But we're hoping that businesses such as the Cheese Cave and the Artist Attic, which isn't quite downtown, but it's close, the Foodery, Moxie. I have a feeling there are a few others in that area that would jump on board. Langford's is participating, although they're not downtown. I think Clyde's Corner, not Clyde's Corner, but the Crooked Mile Gallery, and they're going to have a coffee shop that's going to have an open mic set up. And so they're going to welcome people to stay there and experience the art. So I think they'll be participating too.
Yeah, we actually have a tremendous number of inside venues downtown for a night walk. If we, Umpqua Bank would open up, and this JB Grillers next to Snappy Craft, they would open up. There's a whole bunch. They're ready to go. All we have to do
Yeah.
is do it.
Yeah, Lavanya wants to see a mariachi band down at the Mexican restaurant.
Oh,
Virginia, did you hear that? You two need to get together and let's do it. All right.
I just want to say I really like the logo too.
Oh, good. Yeah, we're embracing this idea of Phoenix as the heart of the valley.
Yeah, I love it.
And it is.
Yeah.
I might have spaced out a second, but is it, there gonna be like a passport? Like you would like if you did the art walk, would you like get like it punched or stamped or something?
That might get implemented more into the treasure hunt that we are going to be working on eventually.
Oh, okay. I was just throwing ideas out. Okay.
We could definitely incorporate ideas like that down the road for certain events. Art walks typically don't have something like that. It's more for like a studio tour or a treasure hunt, but we could consider it.
Yeah, that's fine. I wasn't sure if you said that or not. And then I want to tell a story. I went on a date once and this guy was like, how do you know a civilization is thriving? And he said, by their art, like the art they have. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to say that. And then the parkour park was really cool. I've never seen any pictures of that before.
Oh, right. I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned the pictures. So I tried to give you a range in this slideshow of, this budget in this proposal is just a general idea, right? It really depends on the materials and the design, how much, and the amount of space, square footage, how much the budget would be. Right now, we'd consider any amount, and I think it'd be a really good complement with this, if the YMCA comes into town too, for us to have this venue. But it could be as aesthetically pleasing and artistic as we could afford. And I think there's such a beautiful range of options of how we could go with it.
Yeah, because I talked to Rylan before the meeting started and he's like, a parkour park. And I was like, what? No. And then I saw the pictures and I was like, oh, that's like kind of cool. Like, and it's like fun movement. Like it would get people moving and stuff. Yeah.
It's about exploring your environment, and they actually host, regional competitions. So we could draw people here to Phoenix, with this idea of like having competitive meets, from
cool. Larry loves
down the
parkour.
West Coast.
Do you even know what parkour is?
Oh, yes.
Just teasing you.
Kids involved.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, if you've been to the
yes.
Foodery, you've seen how kids like to climb on everything at the Foodery, right? We need a place for kids to climb.
oh,
We need this.
yeah.
Okay, good. I think that's it. No other questions? Did you? Yes.
I'm just gonna
Eric.
summarize. So I'm hearing that there's some support maybe to go ahead with the request.
Yes, and we are going to meet the next city council meeting to talk about the budget, and this is a request. So all the councilors, I assume you're listening, and it's a request. So I assume we're going to.
Okay, well, so we're presenting the budget, so we'll probably have to, before that time.
Okay,
and-
okay.
And try to make sure it works, but I just want to make sure.
But next week, we just sent that survey out to all the citizens. Wouldn't it be good if they showed their thing and like get citizen input?
Well, that's part of strategic planning. We're going to talk about that. Those slides here, but
Yeah,
yeah, that's a separate process from what we're doing here with the budget. Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah, strategic planning is long-term. This is, we got to face the budget for the next fiscal year.
Oh, I thought this was long-term because it sounded like an annual thing they wanted, like repeat.
So, yeah, we would like to have that thrown in because, and I want to make a comment here. This is historic, okay? I don't think in the history of Phoenix, we've ever had an arts council and a group that's pulled together specific proposals to really bring art into our community. It's never happened before. The time is now. The time is now. That's my opinion.
Expecta.
And that's why I asked the council to be favorable in the consideration here. It's really, really critical, I think. And, there's so many directions they can go, as you can see. The thing with the school is really exciting.
Yes.
You know, that's never been done before. We have all these walls around Phoenix that are sitting there and they're ugly. And we need to do something about it. Umpqua Bank, the school, I mean, I'm sure they've got a huge list. And
Yeah,
and we have a muralist here who's ready to jump in, world-class muralist. This is historic.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm asking everyone to jump on board. I really think this is,
Yeah.
changes our community. Go
Just
ahead.
echo that comment. I think we've had one public art approval in the last X number of years. This is
Across the street.
across the street.
Yeah, and that's it.
But we talked to Starbucks. They came up with a mural. So I mean, there are ways that we can influence things that might not be totally a city responsibility, but I think it's a great direction.
Well, we need to,
Yeah.
I think the city needs to kickstart things to get things going and to show support. But, and Becca has made clear she's going out for sponsorship. She knows all this.
Yes,
I know
and
that.
I wanted to mention the parkour too. We were really hoping for a big corporate sponsor on that one, could be a lot of fun.
Mhm.
So we are thinking of sponsorships, but to have your support, just cheering us on and approving of some of these projects as far as it being public facing or, on certain properties, areas that are designated for parks, and things such as that. We really, really appreciate your help and support in making some of these visions come to life.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
We really appreciate it. Good.
Thank you.
All right, I know we're moving a little slow tonight. I'm aware of that. Okay, and to get a bigger picture, Joe Slaughter's coming in to talk about the big picture, strategic plan. And Joe, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
And talk to us about the big plan of the future. Again, this is something that I think is extremely exciting. We've had strategic plans in the past. We have a new Phoenix. We need to have a new vision, and let's go and do it.
So, good evening. My name is Joe Slaughter, and I'm here to talk to you about two different topics this evening. The first one is strategic planning, and then the second one is urban renewal, because I think there's a pretty strong correlation between the two potentially. As Mayor Muehlhofer stated, basically, everything has a correlation to strategic planning. So the presentation you just heard, actually both of the last two presentations, I guess, could fit into that category, because again, everything can fit into your strategic planning process. So I guess, what is strategic planning? It's a process that organizations use to define their vision and their goals for future and to set objectives for how to achieve those goals. So the current strategic plan that's in place in Phoenix was adopted in 2001. The bulk of the work in creating the plan, the council came together in a 2-day work session. I want to say it was around July of 21. Then the plan takes some time to actually put together, and it came back for adoption. I want to say sometime in the fall, probably around October or so of 21. Which is roughly a year after the Almeda fire. So you can probably imagine that the plan itself was really looking through the lens of fire recovery and what are the immediate next steps we need to take in helping this community rebuild and hopefully kind of set it on a path towards, a brighter future, because it was pretty bleak at that time. I would have to say that the work that was done at that time was, in my opinion, highly effective. The plan that was created has been used as a roadmap for so much of what you've seen happen over the last 4 years in Phoenix. And I guess I personally believe that there's been a whole lot of really great things. I hope everybody agrees with that. Some of the things that have occurred here with the Foodery, the new government public safety center, this facility getting, I think, used more and more. Just the vibrancy and life in Phoenix, I think, is pretty remarkable. I don't spend as much time here anymore as I used to. For those who don't know, I used to work for the city of Phoenix for 4 years, so I spend a lot of time here. I live in Medford, so I'm still here quite often. There's a lot of great places in Phoenix I like to come visit and people like to come see, so I'm here. But I never stop being amazed with things that have changed in the year since I worked here. Things continue to progress. So really that brings us back to, where we are now and why another strategic plan, because the plan that was adopted was really good at identifying actionable items that could be undertaken by staff. And every time something is brought forward to the city council on your agenda report, you see the city council or the goals from the strategic plan that it relates to. But the plan is running out of actionable items because the community, the staff, and the city council have done such a great job of doing those things. So now we need to revise the plan so we know where to go next. But I think that we can all probably agree that we would have probably struggled to kind of imagine where Phoenix is now, 4 years ago. And I think that now that we have this new reality of what Phoenix has become and is becoming, it's important to maybe spend a little bit more time in the visioning process, not just the immediate next steps, but where ultimately are we trying to get to as a community? Because we need that kind of guiding light long-term to then build the plan and some of the goals that bring us closer to that overall vision. And the only way to do that appropriately is to involve more than just your staff and the city council, but to involve as much of the community as possible. And so the process has started of reaching out to people of Phoenix to provide input about what it is that they value, what they want to see about the future, what they think is going well, what could be done better, so on and so forth. Also reaching out to the Planning Commission, Parks and Recreation Committee. I have some other groups that I've been asked to reach out to directly, which is the Save the Phoenix Wetlands Group, the Phoenix Arts Council, the Chamber, the school district, and then possibly, depending on timing, this newly or soon to be formed FURAC group, which is the Phoenix Urban Renewal Advisory Committee. But everybody, whether they're in those groups or not, we want them to individually fill out a survey so we can hear from them individually. But some of these groups, it's important to hear kind of a collective vision from each of them about what it is that their group would like to see the city council target in the years moving forward. So that's kind of the overall vision for things. You have some information in your packet with some dates, and I'll go over first the kind of the bigger picture schedule, which is we started the community outreach portion of this project. There will be eventually in July is what we're targeting, a city council workshop. So we will come together and we will have the information that was collected from the public to help guide the process. But then we'll do a similar thing to what was done 4 years ago with the city council working through the process of formulating a plan. Once that information's been provided, then there will be some time of putting that plan together based on that information, working with Eric and his staff. And then we'll come back in October to bring that draft for the council to review, and the council give some feedback on, yes, this looks really great, but we could make some changes here, or no, we need to make some major changes, whatever it is. But once we get to a point where the council feels pretty comfortable with what they see, the next step will be to actually take it back out to the public, so the public can then look at it and say, yeah, that's also what we expected. Of course, that's the hope, right? And if not, tell us where we missed the mark. But then ultimately, once we've got buy-in from the public as well, we'll bring it back to the city council for the final adoption of the plan. And then this is then the roadmap for the next several years. The hope is that there is a vision that can be adopted kind of more generally, and then there'll be goals that should help move you closer to that vision, but those can still be kind of aspirational in nature. But then you'll have objectives and action items that say, these are the actions we're going to take to reach certain objectives, and these objectives are going to move us closer to the goals. And as we get closer to these goals, we're getting closer to the perfect vision of what Phoenix is trying to become or wants to be. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, that process. A little more information on the community outreach. So I've already met with the Planning Commission on May 12th and then the Parks Committee on May 14th. Their mailers were sent out to all water billing customers in Phoenix. And that list was used because we're trying to reach the actual residents of the units. Also, you're probably aware that the city limits line and the water customer line doesn't really match perfectly well just yet. There's some delayed annexation that will be effective in 2027. So pretty soon. And so those folks aren't yet residents of Phoenix, but I think it's really important that we hear from them because this plan will overlap them becoming part of the city of Phoenix. We're going to be holding our first community meeting in this building on May 27th. And that will be presented in English and there'll be Spanish language translation available. The following night, there will be another meeting and it's actually across the street over in the community room or the EOC in front of that building. And that one will be done in Spanish as the primary language of presentation with English translation available. So we're hoping that, and all the survey information also is both languages. There's the separate QR codes for each of the Spanish and English language versions. And really the community meetings, we hope, of course, to have as much turnout as we can get. But really, the idea is that maybe not everybody wants to fill out a survey, although the survey was designed to be very brief because I know myself, if I start answering a survey and it takes me more than about 5 minutes, I kind of just stop. And also if I have to click on one page to go to the next page and there's pages of things, I also stop. So it is very brief. And I think the average person can complete it in 5 minutes. But some people would rather come and talk in person, talk to their neighbors about what it is that their neighbors are thinking because it helps them to formulate their own opinions, whatever. So that's why we want some in person as well. I heard the concern earlier today about, the survey results. Surveys are, I guess, notorious for having pretty low, turnout. Somewhere around 3% is what your average is. We hope to exceed that. There was already one sent to everybody. There'll be another round of the same information, kind of abbreviated, sent out in the upcoming newsletter sent out by the city. Rosa's been a huge help in coordinating that, also putting it on the city's website and on Facebook. I think word of mouth is probably the most important part here, is that we really want to hear from as many people as we can. And so talking to your friends, your neighbors, your family, people who don't have to necessarily even live in Phoenix. I mean, there's a place on there that informs us about where people live, whether it's outside of or certain parts of Phoenix, just kind of for our information. Not that we're collecting it about that person, just so we know where the feedback came from. But, if people work in Phoenix or people recreate in Phoenix or, people own a business in Phoenix, whatever it is, I mean, we want to hear from them as well. So it's not just residents. And so with that, I think I will conclude this portion of my presentation and I'll ask if there's any questions about strategic planning and the process.
Last time we did a 2-day strategic planning session. Is that what that will kind of look like again?
I think so, yes. I think the overview will be probably trying to get you the information ahead of time about what the survey results were and that sort of thing. I know me personally, I like to be able to kind of do some pre-study before I come and have to make a decision on something or even have a conversation about it. So we'll try to get that out in advance in some kind of a digestible form. It won't just be raw data. It will be broken out and presented. The first day, I think, is going to be largely kind of just setting the tone for the overall process and what we're trying to accomplish, and then maybe work a little bit towards that larger vision portion of things. And then the second day would probably be some more of the nuts and bolts as far as building the thing that's going to get us to where we want to go. So yes, I think it's probably too much work for one day. And so I expect it'll be something like 2 4-hour sessions or something along those lines, because I don't know about you, but I'd rather not try to do it all in 8 hours because I feel like we'll lose some productivity there.
Yes.
And I want it to be fun also. So we'll see. I'll work with Eric and with Al to figure out the details, but I expect it'll be 2, half days basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
One of the effective things that took place, Zach had little cards printed out for the Parks and Recreation survey. And I wondered if something like that, where we can, as the council people and others, hand out door to door those little cards and get people to respond.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And then, businesses the Foodery, for example, I mean, they shouldn't be the only one always mentioned, but just because I see the crowds there sometimes, just having them available for people. The idea is, these QR codes you can scan with your phone. You could probably fill it out while you're waiting in line, for your food or something. So it's just making people aware of it, just getting us the information. But yeah, I think that we'll be looking to target some more. It'll be a matter of seeing what kind of response we get initially and then see how much more we need to put into getting additional turnout, because we don't want to spend, a whole bunch of time and money on something if we have 50% or greater turnout, right? I mean, that would be outstanding. I was looking at some census data and everything's outdated. It's not, obviously for this year, but somewhere between 20 and 25% of the population is under 18 years of age here. That doesn't mean we can't hear from them. I mean, high schoolers, especially middle schoolers. I mean, anybody that wants to fill out a survey, I mean, great. But, that takes out a certain number from your population right away. And then, people, if they don't feel incentivized to do something, it's hard. And as my background's in land use planning, it's really tough because we truly want to hear from people in shaping the plan, as opposed to when you bring the plan out and everybody goes, wait a second, what are you doing? You're like, well, we tried so hard for so long to try to ask your opinion. But that is kind of, hopefully we can avoid that this time around, that it isn't only important after, something's happening that's affecting somebody in some negative way. Now they're upset because it's occurring, that we can actually hear from them and hopefully avoid that process that gets to that negative, action that they don't want to see. So, that's just my word of advice to everybody is you may not see it as important yet, but take the 5 minutes now, because you'll have an opportunity right now to help shape what it is we're working on and what we're shooting for, right? I mean, there's so many different directions Phoenix could go. Where should we go? So let's figure that out before we get started.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I took that survey right before I came here, and it did only take about 5 minutes.
Great.
Unless you wanted to write paragraphs or something. And then I also noticed that somebody posted in the Phoenix, Oregon page on Facebook already about it, that, hey, this arrived in my mailbox. Let's tell them what we want. And then I'll probably make one as well, just as a public knowledge kind of thing, and see if we can't boost our numbers a little.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to fill out the survey. And I appreciate that it only took that long. Yes, we tried to give, as much as you could, kind of multiple choice. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're not guiding or directing all answers. So I want to make sure there's opportunities for people to share their opinions that doesn't fit into a simple little box. So if you want to spend more time writing a paragraph and letting us know in detail, it may take longer, but we want to hear that also.
Any other comments here?
One more. I'll go door to door for one afternoon and then, because I love talking. That's it. I'll go door to door one afternoon and try to get people to do the survey.
Great. So yeah, we will print up some cards. We'll have those available. Because I think if people, especially are willing to go out and hand out those door to door, then that's great.
Yeah, my point is that no one will be able to say, hey, you didn't try and really reach out as much as possible. That's all I'm asking. It sounds like you're covering everything. That's all we can do. All right. And I like the process. We're not in a hurry. We're taking time, and we can go back and forth and look at it and negotiate and judge it so that this product is, the best we've ever had. And I'm looking forward to it, because we need a vision, because we're changing. That's for sure. As over the years, it's totally different now. Okay. I'll let you continue on to urban renewal, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
So this is going to be kind of a hybrid presentation. The initial target was Urban Renewal 101, meaning this is an overview about urban renewal and how it works. But I felt like, especially with some of the recent actions adopting annual reports and whatnot for the existing Phoenix Urban Renewal Agency, that I should also provide just some kind of overview information about the existing agency. So I'm going to jump back and forth between those two things a little bit, but we can come back and focus on either portion of that as we get through it. So first of all, just starting off with urban renewal basics. As you're all aware, there is an existing urban renewal agency in Phoenix. But how's that formed? So urban renewal is a financing mechanism that's used to improve economic viability in specified areas. So there is ORS Chapter 457 gives cities and counties the ability to activate an urban renewal agency. I really like that term. Basically kind of tells you it's like a power you have within you. You just have to choose to exercise it. So yeah, it's kind of a superhero-ish kind of a thing to me, I guess, activate. We're gonna use this now. And so the power to create plans and projects to address blighted areas in the community. And those areas within the plan are called the plan areas. So examples of blight are buildings that are unsafe or unfit for occupancy, inadequate infrastructure, or population loss. You could also have disuse of property resulting from poor planning and the underutilization of land with the potential to contribute to public health, safety, and welfare. So there's pretty broad definitions of blight. And I would argue that Phoenix probably had some much more profound blight in the past. And I would say that the existing FURA has done a really good job of addressing some of that. Then the other reality of it is the Almeda fire actually cleared out quite a few things that were blighted previously. But because of the existence of the urban renewal agency, some of those areas you see now getting redeveloped and rebuilt probably faster than they would have otherwise. So moving on from there, so how does it work? So a city or county has to do a preliminary feasibility. So you're looking at whether or not there's blighted areas. Then, if there is, how large are these areas? And then what would the projects be that would successfully address that blight? The city then can activate that urban renewal agency or URA by declaring via ordinance that there's blighted areas and that the city needs this URA in order to address the blight. The urban renewal agency is separate from the city. So as you're aware, FURA has its own board. It meets separately from the city. The city must establish that governing structure. So in the case of FURA, there was previously a separate board that was in charge, separate from the city council, that was making decisions on FURA related things. Eventually the city chose to make those one and the same as far as the city council acted as the FURA board, but that doesn't have to be the case. So neither the acreage or assessed value of the property or the area can be more than 25% of your whole city area or assessed value for populations under 50,000. The maximum indebtedness is something you establish early on or in the adoption of the plan, and that's going to determine the maximum amount of money that can be collected for projects in the urban renewal agency. The maximum indebtedness here is capped at either 50 million or 150 million, depending on the value of the urban renewal area, whether it exceeds 50 million at the formation. So those are some pretty big numbers. As you'll see, the existing FURA is much smaller than either of those numbers. It's less than 50 million. Significantly less. So how does financing work? So an area is designated as urban renewal area or agency. The tax assessed value of the properties within that area is frozen. So this is known as the frozen base. So the amounts of money to each of the taxing jurisdictions within the area, it gets locked at that frozen base level. So they are no longer collecting more or less tax after the formation of this district. They are frozen at that spot. All increases that occur above that frozen base now, that value, that increment as it's called, is taxed at the same rates it would have been previously, but now instead of that additional the money that collected from that increment going to those districts as it was before, will go 100% now on that increment to the urban renewal agency. And I'll show you some numbers that will help, I guess, kind of help you visualize that maybe. So first, I guess this is just a graphic or a chart showing that. So in this case, there's $1 million value of the area. So if you look at the area where the urban renewal agency is formed, its value, the year that the district is formed as $1 million. And so those taxing districts or taxing jurisdictions that exist within that area will continue to collect their money based, their tax rate on that $1 million value for the lifetime of the agency. All the growth in that area as far as value, that increment can also get taxed at the same rates, but the money, instead of going to those taxing jurisdictions, will go to urban renewal to fund the projects. And then the purple lines at the end there show basically what happens once the agency goes away. That entire value then gets released back to all the underlying jurisdictions at their appropriate rates. So this actually ended up being a lot more complicated than I thought it would be. The reason that you have a property value of $520,020 is because I actually went and I grabbed a property in Phoenix. This is a commercial property. This isn't a residential property. Just kind of discussed earlier, there's a difference between assessed value and real market value. So, to have this kind of value, this is more than just your typical single family home. This is a commercial property. But the complication has to do with the complexities of taxation. And I'm going to spare you the details, but there's compression that occurs. So just in general, the educational services can't exceed $5 total, and all the other general government portion can't exceed $10. So overall, the maximum that could be charged would be $15, but it's not even that simple. So in this example, if you actually did the math, the 3 educational services exceed $5. So there is compression in this area in your educational services, but this shows you what the districts would be entitled to if there was no compression and nothing else happening. I also had to strip out urban renewal from Phoenix because it would have made it more complicated. So that's my disclaimer. And I can go into way deeper detail on that, but you probably don't want to hear it. So what this shows, though, is an example of how urban renewal works. So you can see the 2024 property value. You can see the tax rates over there on the left. And then you see, based on those tax rates, and this is per thousand, what ends up occurring or what's being collected off of this property for each of the districts. It's pretty simple math there. So in 2025, what is shown there in property value is an increase of 3%. As what was already discussed earlier, you can pretty much count on a 3% increase with nothing changing, 3% increase every year. So the first example, 2025, shows no urban renewal. And you can see in my slide, I have urban renewal 2, because this is, again, pretending there isn't an urban renewal. So this would be like forming a new urban renewal. So without urban renewal, you see that the property goes up 3%. All the taxes collected for all those taxing jurisdictions, it goes up 3% also. With urban renewal, the property value goes up 3%, but the amount of tax collected by each of those jurisdictions stays exactly the same as it was in 2024. And that money, you can see it's $232.04 is what they would have all collectively been entitled to otherwise. That money goes to urban renewal to fund urban renewal. So do we want to spend any more time on this slide before moving on? Okay. So as if that wasn't already complicated enough, it doesn't show up in your tax bills that way. So how urban renewal works is the calculations are done just as I just explained. It's only taking tax increment or collecting tax from the increment from the properties within the urban renewal area. So that's how they calculate how much the agency is entitled to. However, when they go to actually collect it, they add up all the increased and assessed value in that area. So they come up with a number. So it's entitled to whatever the amount is, but then they distribute that across all properties within that city or county or whatever, whoever it is that has the agency. So even though I live in Medford, like I said, I don't live within an urban renewal agency. Urban renewal shows up on my tax bill. It isn't increasing my taxes. It isn't doing anything other than it's showing up on there because it's a mathematical function. And I can show you later how this kind of works, that the effective tax rate of those other districts throughout the whole city gets decreased somewhat, and urban renewal has an effective tax rate across the whole thing. But it's not, I'm only telling you this because it's really hard and people don't understand it. Because if you live in Phoenix, there's a very good chance you probably don't actually live in the urban renewal district boundary, FERA's boundary. But if you look at your tax bill, there is an urban renewal line item. And it isn't an additional tax. It's you're paying the same amount of tax you've been paying otherwise, just that a portion of your money is now going to urban renewal instead of to these other districts that would have collected it. I'm going to leave that there for now. We can come back if we have to. I'm not sure it's worth getting into more discussion on. So how it impacts taxing jurisdictions, we already kind of talked about this. So they continue to collect at their frozen base. So it's important to let everybody know that, so no new revenue increase and there's no decrease. It's the same. They do not collect taxes on the growth area. So the whole idea here is that they're foregoing that money. So collectively, all the taxing jurisdictions are essentially investing in something, like they're becoming partners, whether they want to be or not. And they're going into this joint venture where they're going to invest this money to hopefully benefit all of them in the long run. So we're trying to spend money to accomplish things that are going to increase the tax value of that whole area. And once that work is done, all the districts are going to benefit from that process. That's kind of the overall scheme of this. And the last one there, increased revenue for all taxing jurisdictions afterwards. If it works, that's what's going to result. And I can show you mathematically that, the FERA has increased by more than 3% per year on average. This is showing now, instead of per thousand, this is showing per dollar. So like at the county's example, they charge a little over $2 per thousand, or as you can see, 0.002, what is that? 0.2 cents on every dollar. So this also shows how urban renewal, the existing urban renewal, affects the district. So in the county's example, they are collecting, instead of $2 roughly per thousand, they're collecting about $1.80 per thousand. So they are losing about 80 cents per thousand of assessed value in the city of Phoenix based off of urban renewal that's here. But that goes back to the argument of, but for urban renewal, would there be as much value in that district that they're now missing out on if it wasn't for the investment of urban renewal? That's kind of the counter argument to that. An important thing here to note is the school district. So you'll see that they are one of the larger, if not, they are the largest. They have the highest tax rate. So, theoretically, they would be the most affected by urban renewal. However, in Oregon, property taxes are collected at a local level. They're all sent up for education. They're all sent up to the state, and then they're redistributed throughout the state based off of student enrollment. So the Phoenix Talent School District isn't affected directly by urban renewal. You can say that the whole pot of money throughout the state is affected by all the renewal agencies, but it gets kind of socialized throughout the state. So it's not a matter of Phoenix is taking something directly from Phoenix Talent School District in this case. Phoenix is taking something at a very small level from all the districts throughout the entire state, just like any other renewal agency is throughout the state. And then this, from dollar standpoints, this is directly from your most recent annual report from the year ending June 30th, 2024. Shows basically the effect or the impact of urban renewal on those jurisdictions. Again, the school district isn't truly impacted that way. You can see that the city of Phoenix, there's quite a bit of money that if urban renewal didn't exist would be coming to the city of Phoenix instead. I know there was some discussion last year about urban renewal paying for staff from the city of Phoenix that supports that agency. And you can see in this case that if the city of Phoenix is providing support for urban renewal, there probably is a good justification for why urban renewal should pay for it, because the city of Phoenix is missing out on those funds they could have used for something else. So that's it shows you that it's not just other agencies, it's the city itself that is impacted. This I'll be really brief on. I'm not actually going to go over all this. This is just what has to be included in all the plans. Description of what's going to occur, obviously the area itself, if it's going to displace people, what the plan is for those displaced individuals. An important part here also is to note that, property purchases and sales have to be part of the plan. So as it stands, FURA needs to update its plan to account for both property sale or purchases and sales that have occurred. In theory, those things should all be done before you buy and sell property. There's no penalty, I guess, for not, but that all has to be in the plan. So now just a little bit about FURA. So it was formed 2005, frozen base, $27 million roughly. The assessed value of that area now, the 23-24 tax year, was roughly $75 million. So the difference between those two numbers is roughly $48 million. So you can see that area has increased by $48 million in value over the last, 19 years. And then the property tax received by the agency off of that increased value is that $687,000. I was talking earlier about the 50 million and the 150 million is maximum. So you can see the maximum indebtedness established by FURA is not quite 15 million. So it's 14.6 million. The remaining maximum indebtedness left to be spent is a little over 7 million. So slightly more than halfway through kind of the process of spending money for FURA. I did some quick math on these numbers just to kind of see how FURA is keeping up with that 3%. It works out to be roughly 5.5% per year, which doesn't sound like a big difference until you do the math. With at 3% growth, you would be sitting at very close to about that $47 million number. So it's kind of funny the way the math works out, that basically your frozen base value of 27 million is also represents about the additional value that's been added to this area over that 3% growth. So, I mean, that's just how the numbers work. That doesn't mean anything, but really that 5.5% growth over 19 years represents a difference of about $27 million in value. I mean, that's significant. I mean, in my mind, that sounds like a lot more than a 1.5% growth, larger, but that's how compounding interest works, right, Larry? An accountant's correct? Okay, yeah, there you go. So FURA projects. So what has the money been spent on? Main Street revitalization. This has happened, a number of years ago, and some of us weren't even around or really paying attention to Phoenix at the time. So, but what you see on Main Street here didn't exist before FURA. FURA spent significant amount of money on beautifying Main Street. And honestly, I mean, what great work to have had done before the Alameda fire, because I can't even imagine if we were trying to build all the things that had happened without that kind of backbone in place. Then the next one is the Phoenix Plaza. Again, going back to the Alameda fire, I don't know what the city would have done without it. So what a great investment that ended up being used for something it wasn't intended for. But it was like the one solid thing that was remaining here that the city could use to rebuild from. Foodry, that was a project that is an urban renewal project. The agency brought the land to the table for that development to help facilitate the investment of, I want to say it was calculated to be roughly 2 million to start, but I think with both sides of the street you see there, it's closer to being about a $3 million investment from the private side. Urban revitalization grant. I'll get into that here in a little bit more detail in a minute. There's this pier parking lot project and stormwater facilities. Also sidewalks. I think that's a really important part of that project. That portion doesn't have a whole lot of tie-in with FURA, but it sure is exciting to think about downtown kind of extending down to Clyde's Corner and Phoenix Industrial Studios, making it so it's a safe walking environment throughout Phoenix. I think that has a huge potential to change this town. And then these two properties that FURA owns still, which is the heart of Phoenix, which is the property across Main Street, And then the fourth and Bear Creek property, which is over here on the other side of the Civic Center, out along Bear Creek Drive and 4th Street. Not to spend too much time, but took just a couple of quick pictures of what Main Street looks like. I think sometimes we take it for granted. It's in pretty good shape, and it's a really nice setting for economic development. The benches, the trash cans, the pedestrian amenities, the lights, places to put up signs and flowers. Those are all Fura improvements. This building and the Phoenix Plaza, I think, talk about the Civic Center a lot. The Phoenix Plaza is really a great space. And boy, the parking gets used now. So it's probably really great we have that, right? Bouderie, we won't spend too much time on that. But the urban revitalization grant. So this was actually a fairly small amount of money that was invested. I want to say it was roughly $60,000 in total for the program. I could be wrong, but somewhere around that dollar amount. And it was meant to help to support businesses that were remaining after the Alameda fire. So there's a lot of money coming in to help people build new things or rebuild something that was lost. But the existing businesses were really hurting because they lost customers by losing population here. So this was meant to be something that wasn't just for facade improvements or something like that, but it was whatever kind of tangible, asset that they felt like they could use to help their business to grow or to maintain. It was meant to be very flexible. And I think Moxie, they're a recipient of this grant award, one of many or several. I want to say there was 7 or 8. But I think Moxie is a really good example of how the money was spent. The deck on the side of their building there was funded by this, along with some of their facade improvements. Honestly, that was a very unattractive building before Moxie moved into it. It was about as utilitarian as you can imagine. And they've done some really great things, and they are to be credited for that work and their vision for the property. But it sure is exciting to know that Fura could invest just a little bit of money to help make that happen. So I think that's worth mentioning.
And I think during that time, there was matching where they put some of their money in and they got more of the grant.
That's absolutely right. So it was tiered, where the first portion of it, I want to say the first portion was 100%.
Yes.
The Fura. And then the next portion was, I think, 50-50, 1-to-1. And then I think it was 2-to-1, where they had to bring $2 of theirs for every $1 of urban renewal. And ultimately it ended up being, I think, a 50-50 across the whole thing, if the math works out right.
I think it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
About 15,000 is what was available.
Yeah. So they could get, 15,000 total in those different groups. And it's not 50-50. It worked out to where something like 22,500 was a total project cost and 15,000 was Fura's.
Yes.
I don't have it all right in front of me,
right.
but it's
pretty good, Joe.
Near there at least. So Pier, you probably know something about this already. I'm not going to go into great detail about what Pier means, where it comes from. But basically, this is associated with monies that came to the state of Oregon for the 2020 Labor Day fires and straight wind events. And so the city of Phoenix put together an application to use some of that money. I want to say $3.5 million to build infrastructure here in Phoenix, knowing that the money couldn't be easily given directly to business owners because that would federalize their projects and make it very expensive for them to deliver what they wanted to do. The city identified parking lots and stormwater infrastructure as being a way to greatly reduce the cost of development for private entities in downtown. So these are things everybody needs. And if you can provide it and you can centralize it, it'll take up much less land. It'll be more efficient. And this is something that the city, with Fura's participation, because Fura actually owns a couple of these properties, can deliver to the public to hopefully help with what you'll see as the next round of economic revitalization occurring here. So just wanted to give everybody, a taste of what this looks like. 2 of the properties over here behind the Civic Center, and then the stuff across the street, the Heart of Phoenix property. There'll be a portion of them developed with public parking. Mm-hmm. And so immediately that will help with the existing situation with parking downtown. And especially as those properties get developed further. There we go. So last thing, the 2 properties, the Heart of Phoenix property, or the HOP, which is the one on the west side of Main Street. For the folks who may not be as familiar with kind of the history of this property, was purchased in an effort to consolidate land to help to bring in some kind of a larger kind of coordinated redevelopment of the land instead of a piecemeal kind of redevelopment of small parcels. And it was always identified as a place that could be used for some public parking. In addition, it ended up working as an essential piece of the puzzle for the development of the government public safety building. I honestly don't even know how that project could have been done without the use of this property. So FIRA's investment facilitated the development of the government and public safety center. Without it, I mean, that cost of that project could have gone way through the roof because the staging and construction of that would have been extremely difficult without this property as staging. But now it's available. And as you see, it's getting used right now, which is kind of exciting. But ultimately, you know, the plan is for it to get redeveloped on the Main Street side. The back part of it, away from Main Street, will remain public parking kind of in perpetuity. That's the plan. Then on the other corner, Bear Creek and 4th Street, same sort of thing, where away from Bear Creek Drive, there'll be some continuation of the Civic Center parking to go out towards 4th Street. So you have a connection there. But then the remainder of the property is available for development. And I mean, this is an exciting piece. This is your, billboard sign for all the northbound traffic, right? I mean, whatever goes there is a thing that lets people know there's something happening over there you might want to check out, right? So, I mean, this is kind of a flagship location, and it makes a lot of sense that FIRA is involved in the process of helping to determine what's going to be there. So, I know I've gone on for a while here. I'm tie this all back to strategic planning. So, the state law requires that any urban renewal agencies conform, or the plans do, with the city's comprehensive plan. So, the strategic plan that's happening right now is meant to establish the overall vision, and it's guiding all portions of everything the city does. But it's really important in the context of urban renewal, because I see urban renewal as a really powerful tool for accomplishing things that the city desires or wants to achieve, because you have the ability to invest in your own future through urban renewal. And there aren't a lot of, discretionary funds, that you collect through other places that would allow you to do that same kind of investing in your own future through infrastructure projects or grants, et cetera. So I guess keep this in mind. And that's why the timing of this is occurring as you talk about strategic planning. I think that FIRAC is a really good fit for recommendations for priorities for the strategic plan. I think that group, the way I understand it, is meant to be kind of the technicians in all this. They're saying, here's some things that we are looking at wanting to do. Here's some tools, and kind of connecting it. And I would imagine ultimately would bring then those recommendations forward to the city council, and possibly, depending on the direction you go, also the board of FIRA. Could include modifications to the existing urban renewal agency, which is FIRA. Or you could, or I guess I should say, create an entirely new urban renewal agency in Phoenix. The city grew by over 600 acres into PH3 and PH5. Is any of that area appropriate for urban renewal? And then, are there areas that are in the existing urban renewal that could now be removed from urban renewal because those areas have already been benefited by urban renewal? And would that then be a way to provide benefit back to some of these other taxing jurisdictions that have been foregoing their taxes on that increment? This is just an idea, or throwing out there. I'm saying this is a suggestion. Like Home Depot, for instance, was one of the first projects that was built in the urban renewal agency. If that was then the value of that property from what it was pre-development, now post-development, taken out of that agency, you would see less money collected for FIRA, but all those other districts, the fire district, county, et cetera, would get the benefit from that development. That would be something to consider, especially if you're looking to expand into other areas. And I believe, yeah, that's it. So I apologize. I went up probably a little longer than I meant to, but I wanted to give you a good overview of this process and how it works. Any questions for me?
Any questions from the council? All right, great. No, this is something we wanted to do and you got it. And we'll be addressing urban renewal as we go down the road. Anything, Eric Swanson?
Yeah, I'll just mention in terms of just some things coming up. So we got I mentioned already the budget meeting on the 2nd, where we'll be considering the resolutions adopting the budget. Pura will also have a separate budget meeting as well. And we plan on, this is something we need to work out the logistics, but we plan on interviewing candidates ahead of the 6 o'clock meeting to consider the budget. So we're working on maybe, probably an hour, probably would take to get through.
Yeah, we might have to start at 5 o'clock, I think, because we have 6 candidates and then the budget,
Yeah, so
it'll take a while.
Just a heads up on what's coming up, in the future. I know that we're taking more time and I understand that, but I think getting some of this process in motion is going to be really helpful. Thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it. Okay, good. All right. A lot of good information tonight. Okay, we're down to public comments. The people that were here for public comment have either spoken, or they have left. So we'll move on to consent agenda. Say again. No, this is a different one. That's a different one. Yeah. Okay.
Al, are you sure that there's no one that I gave you the public comment sheets that are not here in the audience?
No. We have one, Mr. Lutz later, but
Okay, perfect.
that's different. Yeah. And there's nobody on the Zoom call.
There are folks on the Zoom call, but I do not.
No
see
one wants to
anyone
make any
who's
comments?
known for public comments.
Okay, great. Let's move on then. Okay, we're down to consent agenda. I want to pull the Parks and Recs Committee applications because we want to interview those candidates. That leaves Chief Boker's agenda bill for SRO contract and the minutes. I assume everyone has looked at those. Does anyone want to pull either one of those? If not, I will entertain a motion for those 2 items on the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda, leaving off item A for further discussion.
All right, do I have a second?
I'd second it.
All right, roll call.
Counselor Suetos,
Here.
Counselor Chester,
Yes.
Counselor Vermillion,
Yes.
Counselor Dixon,
Yes.
and motion passed. Okay, Counselor Cambros, there you are.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to Parks and Recs. We have 2 individuals tonight who have applied. And Jeannie Bianca, would you please step up to the podium and just tell us a little bit? We've got your application, but we'd just like to hear a few words from our applicants and why are you interested? Tell us.
I'm relatively new to town life. And I've been in Phoenix for about 3.5 years, I think. And it's starting to feel like home. And I just want to dip my toes in the water and participate more. So I'm already very involved in the Lutheran community garden. And I'm going to branch out. So
Okay.
any questions?
Any questions?
No, reading over your list of things you have done throughout your life, it's pretty impressive. That's pretty neat. From parole and probation to birthing coach to medical office custodian, founding Kinder Haven preschool, advocate for handicapped adults. I love it. That's so, thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no other questions or comments. Could I have a motion, please?
I move to approve Bianca. What is your last name? I don't have it in front of me. Joanne Bianca?
The first name is Jeannie and her last name
Jeannie
is
Bianca. Sorry, I'm doing it off your signature for Parks and Recs.
Okay, do I have a second?
I would second that.
Okay, roll call.
Counselor Chambers. Yes. Counselor Chester,
Yes.
Counselor Sweetos.
Yes.
Counselor Vermillion
Yes.
and Counselor Dixon.
Yes.
Motion
Great.
passes.
Thank you very much, Jeannie.
Thank you.
We look forward to
Yes,
your
thank
input.
you.
Yeah. All right, Bill Howarth, come on up here. You've been waiting a long time. I know that. Both of you have been waiting. It's been a long night. I realize that, but we.
Presentation.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
That's surely a way for me not to get the position.
All right, we'll take the executive summary. All right.
A quick life story. For the first 11 years of my life, I lived with 4 siblings in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the inner city, in what we used to call row house, detached. And our only play area was in the alleyway. My older sister got married when I was 12, moved to the county north of it, which at that time was rural going to suburban, and now it's Megalopolis. And that county, Montgomery County, had a county park. And for my first time at 12 years old, I got to see green grass and trees, and hear birds, and the park was just so impactful for me that at 14, I said, I'm never going to work anywhere or live anywhere where I can't be outside and enjoy nature. And I'm lucky. For 60 plus years, I've lived in 7 different states. I've held guiding licenses in 9 different states. I've been in every state except Hawaii, all the Canadian provinces except the Northwest Territories, Mexico, and Central America. So I'm an outdoor guy. And I've had a wonderful life. And I don't think I would have had the adventure and the experiences and met over 2,000 people from every continent except Antarctica, 12 different countries, without that park.
Wow.
It really touched me.
Wow.
I know they're important. And I want to end with this little exercise, if you'll indulge me. Takes less than a minute, but I have done this in all the places I've lived with people I've guided or taken in, let's just call them nature adventures. So if you all would just stand up for a minute.
It's good. We can sit and
Okay. Yeah. 2,000 plus men and women all around the world. Close your eyes. I'm going to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes. Let's stay. And then would ask, what man-made sound did you hear? Now, again, I'd be outside, and everybody would look at it and say, I didn't hear it. And then I would follow the question up with, when was the last time you experienced that? They got the message.
Right.
And it's the same thing.
Okay.
Nice.
Excellent. All right. Very good. Love it. All right. Can I entertain? No one has any questions right after that. No, we don't. We're speechless.
30 years of
Silence.
Oh, silence. Yeah, silence. Could I have a silent motion, please?
what sound?
Yeah, I would move to accept William Howarth as a Howarth, yes, to the Parks and Recreation Committee.
I second.
All right. Roll call.
I thought it was a question.
No.
Counselor Cambros. Yes. Counselor Chester.
Yes.
Counselor Sweetos.
Yes.
Counselor Vermillion.
Yes.
Counselor Dixon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining the gang.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
that's important. All right, now on to more serious business, the public hearing. And we're going to have Mr. Moody come up here. Say again?
You missed.
No, we did that under consent
Oh, did it?
agenda. Yep, we're already past that.
Minutes?
Yes, that was included. Okay,
Oh, good.
so we're on to public hearing
I'm not hearing.
and Mr. Moody is up there to keep us on the straight and narrow on this. So Mr. Swanson, I believe you start. Do you have any comments on this?
Well, no, I just wanted to state that the work that has been done on this ordinance has been extensive. Many hours have been put in. I think the planning commission spent a good deal of time going through this, and just from hearing from staff, I think they've done an excellent job. And you know, I think again, it comes from many hours of hearings and meetings with the planning commission. And I think Zach's prepared to give you kind of an overview of this project, or the work that they're doing in terms of the suggested motion tonight. But one thing I do want to state, not as a point of order, but we do have in our council rules that if we go past 9 o'clock, we have to agree to do that. So you may want to do that now, and then that way that we won't be in the middle.
We won't be interrupted. Okay, so we need
I
a
move
motion.
to extend past 9.
Okay, do we need a second then on that?
Yeah.
Roll call. Okay, second, please. Oh,
To extend
we are
past
going
9.
beyond 9 o'clock.
I don't want to.
You're,
I walk here, I have to walk home in the dark. And my dog has
okay,
to go to bed.
I'll take you home. We're almost done.
We're almost done.
Yes, trust me. And
By this, when it goes from 9:30 to 10, it has to be a majority. Everyone has to vote.
Right,
But when it's
right.
9 to
Okay.
30, it's
trust me,
I'll give
we
you
want to
15
get through
minutes.
this. Okay,
15 minutes.
So I would second that motion.
okay.
all right, and we need a roll call.
Yes. Sorry. Councilor Rebellion.
Yes.
Councilor Nixon.
Yes.
Councilor Chester.
I'd rather not, but
You can still vote that way.
And Councilor Cameron.
She went to the restroom.
Oh,
she's missing.
So we don't have a quorum yet,
we have 3 yeses.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that still counts.
so we do have a quorum. Okay, fine, let's continue, please. All right, so are you,
No, that's it. I think I just
all right,
wanted
thank
to
you very
remark
much
on
for that. Right, all right, then. Mr. Moody.
All right, I will make this brief. I did have a presentation, but I'm gonna not indulge you in the presentation tonight. Hopefully you've read the packet. I need to read an opening statement, which I know is gonna be really boring, but this is a planning action and it's required by statute. So, and we do have people here to speak on the item. So the Phoenix City Council has the authority to hold legislative hearings in accordance with the Oregon Public Meeting Laws as described in ORS 192.610 through 192.710. Your decision on legislative issues is the final decision of the city. The planning manager has determined that the approval criteria that apply to the following application or issues currently before the council are as follows. And really, this is a code amendment, so it's the comprehensive plan that applies and our zoning code applies as well. Evidence and testimony in the hearing must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria as the city land development code and comprehensive plan or other applicable land use and development related regulations that a person believe apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient clarity and detail to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond accordingly to the issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Before the end of the hearing, any participant may request a continuance. In addition, whether or not there is a continuance, a participant may request that the record of the proceedings remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing. City Council will consider whether or not they'll continue the hearing or leave the record open for a specified length of time for new written comments and testimony and evidence. If you're here to speak, when called to speak, please come to the microphone and unmute yourself, or unmute yourself if you're on Zoom. State your name and residential address for the public record and direct your comments to the applicable criteria identified by staff. The following time limits are allotted for public testimony. Applicant has 15 minutes. Individuals in the audience can have up to 5 or less if the council chooses. Individuals representing a group, which I don't think that is the case here, have 10 minutes, and city staff opportunity to comment. After listening to the testimony and considering the evidence, the city council may vote to approve with conditions, or deny the application unless the matter is continued or tabled to another date, time specific. Okay, all the legal stuff out of the way. I do have folks from DLCD and OTAC on the line here. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on the code amendments unless there is a number of questions. But what I will say is that as you heard the Greenway discussion today, a lot of these code amendments were post-fire. Right around the November of 2022 is when we started this project, and it was the goal of this project to bring traffic to the Greenway and bring Greenway traffic to the downtown core. So in doing that, it required a few legislative amendments to our code to make the downtown core and the highway commercial districts that are adjacent to the Greenway more walkable, more pedestrian oriented. And so what you see in the code language tonight is an attempt to bring buildings closer to the street, bring buildings with pedestrian scale, plazas, seating areas, things of that nature, to expand the downtown area, such on the highway commercial district and along the Greenway where there are the ability for more commercial uses and things of that nature. So what's being asked tonight, so these code amendments are done by ordinance. We're asking for this application and the amendments. The Planning Commission held a study session and 2 public hearings. One public hearing continued to 2 different meetings. And I think more importantly, the citizen involvement aspect of this project slated by the Department of Land Conservation and Development and OTAC and 3J Planning was a good process. It was long. They all participated. There was a CAC technical advisory committee of staff. And so a lot of public input for as much as you can get for this type of amendment, which was good. So a lot of good came out of the public portions of it. Not a lot of public comment when it was noticed. I think that a lot of folks realized the good that was coming out of these development changes. And I will say a lot of them mandated by the state. A lot of them are just cleaning up our code for things that are required, such as parking requirements, EV charger requirements, or at least the conduit for that, solar requirements, parking lot design requirements with shade requirements. These are all in an effort to bring more pedestrian oriented traffic to downtown cores and to the commercial highway zone, as well as along the Bear Creek Greenway. The Planning Commission did have a fairly robust discussion around a few items. Of course, their final recommendation is in the final order and the draft that was presented to you. I will say there are a few changes that still need to be made, but they're more text related changes, not substantive, with the exception of one. There are some code regulations that are based on the size of a parking lot or the size of your development of your area. And I missed this in the draft, but the state mandate is anything that's over 1/2 acre is subject to these provisions that are being presented in the code tonight. It says 1/4 acre. That was recommended by DLCD, but the statute says 1/2, and the Planning Commission agreed that 1/2 acre was the size they wanted to go with. Feeling that 1/4 acre parking lot might be too small to burden some of these rather strict mandates with. So there's a lot more in the code amendments than that. Again, hopefully the council has had an opportunity to read through them. I did try to highlight, I did not highlight every single track change in there. I just kind of went through in the bulk of those sections as here's what's new. I didn't highlight what was taken out. I kind of just identified those. And I feel like the end result is a good document. There are still differences. People, the planning commission didn't fully agree on everything, but they did come to a vote to move the project forward. And that's what's required. So it is the council's authority in which they can adopt this or continue this hearing. We will have a public hearing after I'm done here, and can continue the hearing if they so choose to read the document in more detail or to take time to ask more questions. Obviously, when we're not in a little bit of a time crunch. So with that, I am able to answer questions if there are any, or things that the council wants me to go over specifically.
Yeah, thank you. And the planning commission for putting this together. I mean, this is a 2 and 3 year project, and thank you. On our handout, page 159 or page 5 of the proposal here, it indicates that there's going to be a relaxing of density and use restrictions in certain cases, but it wasn't real specific. I guess I need a little more.
As far as what specifically is being changed.
What might that apply to?
So, and hopefully I'm understanding the question, right? So you're looking, which paragraph are you looking at on page 5?
It's under expanding housing choices and affordability, talking about duplexes, townhomes, small apartments, manufactured homes, and by relaxing density and use restrictions and streamlining review processes for new housing, the city is addressing both the urgent need for post-fire housing recovery and the long-term need for supporting social economic diversity and affordability.
These are some of the ones that are mandated. So we're required to allow for certain types of housing in certain areas that we weren't required to before. Mixed use housing, mixed use commercial residential developments are more standards driven in the proposed code amendments, less discretion being applied. The process portion of it is that the state is moving towards more clear and objective standards that can be that applications can be approved more ministerially, but subject to really a yes or no answer. And if that's the case, then they shall be approved, is what the state is moving us to. So these changes in this code reflect a more streamlined process, but it also takes into consideration some of the mandates, such as parking requirements. We can't mandate parking in residential zones within a quarter of a mile of a transit route anymore. Some commercial zones can't have parking requirements anymore. If they choose to have parking requirements, then they have to have EV or they have to have certain landscaping requirements. So these are the things that we're required to do. That expanding the housing choice and the affordability is, at least the state believes, that it is directly tied to not having to build parking and not having to put all these barriers up that make it difficult to construct either affordable or market rate housing.
Because I think I read someplace else deeper in here about, but it continued to talk about the density requirements on the different types of residential construction. And that, I don't think that has changed in the code.
Not in this code per se. I think it's just being more in line with the uses that are allowed. I'll use duplexes as an option. Duplexes are allowed in our code. We will have other changes in our code to be more in line with state law. There's a few that we will have to be doing when we have to identify a climate friendly and equitable area, which is coming up in the next year. And we'll come back and we'll have to refine this code again to be a little more restrictive on or we will get less restrictive about what we can require and let people do more to reduce the burden. So it's coming. We just took the minimal route that we needed to really address the desire of what this code was intended to do, which was to bring commercial development to the core and connect that commercial development to the greenway and vice versa.
Very good, thanks.
Any other questions?
No.
All right, I believe we can then open the hearing.
I did have another.
Go ahead, go ahead.
And this has to do with the fencing along the greenway.
Yes.
And I was thinking, it's going to have to be a little more transparent than 50% and this, I don't know, all kinds of things. But then I read the cannabis requirements. If you're growing your cannabis in your backyard and it's up against the greenway,
right,
you've got to hide that from passersby.
Yeah, so in that case, there was a lot of conversation around this, and I'm sure some of the public comment that you'll hear will be talking about that tonight. And there was a robust discussion about, do you create better line of sights with fences that are more transparent on the greenway, or do you allow people to secure their items or their property with a solid wooden fence to keep people out? So that conversation definitely did happen. And ultimately the Planning Commission as a group, not individually, but as a group, came to the conclusion that safety of the folks on the greenway was more important. And that what we're really talking about is the development of new construction in which people can orient their development in such a way that they can protect themselves and put their open space to the front away from the greenway if they choose to. We're not talking about making people that have fences on the greenway now remove them and adhere to the code. And we have a non-conforming section of the code that would allow the replacement of those fences. Let's say we had another greenway fire and the fences burned down along the greenway, they would be able to put back what was there before. It's just, this is focusing on new development.
Zach, is there anything that stops someone from planting hedges and that kind of thing behind those see-through fences?
No, there are landscape requirements along the greenway, although they are too kind of somewhat transparent. Tree spacing, vegetation, those types of things. But it's not an uncommon thing. We don't let people build 6-foot fences in their front yards of residential developments because we want those residences to have eyes on the street. And it's the same concept.
I know crime and theft is a problem. I live next to the railroad tracks and there's people back behind that fencing. I would think I would have a very hard time with that requirement to have that see-through fence with your back area. That's a really rough one for citizens.
Yeah. Well, and what I will say is that when you open the public hearing and you hear the testimony, you can close the public hearing. And we're going to probably run out of time tonight, and you can continue the deliberations to a date time specific, which would just be the next council meeting, so that you have an opportunity to really discuss the comments you're going to hear, because I do think it is important. And I tried not to weigh in one way or the other to sway that conversation. But again, we had about an hour and a half long conversation about fences. And this is where we ended up with. So it'll be your decision as policymakers to decide how you want to take that recommendation.
Okay.
Any other comments right now? Okay, so we're going to open the hearing at this time. And you were the applicant, you already spoke. So next thing is citizens testifying in support of the application. And do I have anyone either online or here?
Thank you.
And I don't. So wait, I'm getting to you. Oh, were there any citizens testifying in support of the application?
I see that
Yes.
Paul has his hand raised. Oh, I don't know what order you'd like to go in.
Okay. Does Mr. K want to talk?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good night.
He does. I see his hand now.
Go ahead, Paul.
I trust you received my email of today.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
That says it. I support the revisions, the amendments as proposed, and compliment the hard work.
Thank you, Paul. Anything else?
Not right now, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in support? Rosa, did I miss anyone?
I don't see anyone online. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. We have someone here in support. Please state your name and address. And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Julia McFadden. My address is 512 South Rose Street here in Phoenix. And I'm going to address actually the issue of the fences in particular, just as a citizen, not as a member of the Planning Commission. And so I think that this item in particular has some really powerful positions on both sides. You have on one side, we have property that we want to protect. We have a sense of safety and privacy, right? Like Councilwoman Vermillion mentioned, if your property is there, you might feel very vulnerable and exposed to all the traffic that's happening. And maybe you don't want to leave your bike out, or you don't want to have to put a padlock on your barbecue, right? And when you have an access way, you have people who have a quick way of getting away with your things. They have visibility to your things, right? So that was definitely something that you have on one side. On the other side, what we have is when we build rows of transparent of fences that you can't see through, we have physical safety for people who don't feel safe when they're walking through and they can't be seen or they can't see if somebody is there or on the other side. There's also, when you have a visibility, less likely to have nefarious activities. People feel less comfortable doing things in places where there's more visibility. So we have, on one side, we have something as personal safety. On one side, we have property safety. On one side, we have property owners who do have some agency as far as this being new developments and the ability to develop properties in a way that can accommodate, whether they're how close they are to the greenway or how far back they are, whether or not they have the recreation on the side or they have a fence for cannabis grow on the side of their house versus in the back. So there were things like this that can be accommodated. So it's a little bit more agency, given that it's new development. The other consideration that I have is for folks, whether it's rangers or law enforcement, who's trying to ensure safety of both property and of people. When they're able to see a wider swath, they're able to more effectively do their job and make sure that everyone is safe. Again, both property, homeowners, and pedestrians. So if what we're trying to do is spur economic growth with having people using the greenway for commerce, we want to make sure that they're feeling safe. And I think that's a really important priority. If we're looking to spur economic growth by having people develop and build there, we want to make sure they feel safe too. It seems to me that allowing law enforcement the ability to provide that safety better with the visibility is something that is kind of paramount and helps address the vulnerabilities on both sides. Okay.
That's it?
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I believe we have no other people that want to be in support. Now we're up to people that are opposed. No, you're in support. You're in support. All right, sir, come forward, Mr. Chris Lutz. All right, you have 5 minutes.
My name is Chris Lutz, 121 Samuel Lane, Phoenix, Oregon. And I am in support of the changes with one small change. So let me first say that I'm speaking as an individual here in Phoenix, not as a member of a commission or any board that I serve on. So I gave each of you a piece of paper and also an email earlier, and it has your name at the top, and then it says, it talks about the proposed motion. You can approve the code changes with changes as discussed. And I hope you will discuss what I'm about to say. So yesterday, I took a ride down the Greenway, I started at Blue Heron Park and I drove down North Phoenix Road, about 2-3 miles. As you travel down the greenway, as you may have done, you'll see on the left-hand side, probably a half mile or more of solid vinyl fencing. You'll see chain link fencing with plastic going through the chain link to hide what's behind it. And you'll see some cedar fencing. If this proposal passes, what I call the normal security or safety fencing will no longer be allowed. So the vinyl fencing or cedar fencing that you currently see, which protects the backyard of people's homes, will no longer be allowed. People on the greenway will have vision into your backyard. As I was traveling down the greenway, I stopped and talked to an individual who's at the old Bear Creek Estates, Coleman Creek Estates. So right behind Starbucks is a mobile home park that burned down. And he's out there watering his lawn. And I went by him and said, I got to talk to somebody about the changes. So going door to door is what I'd love to do when I was, part of Phoenix's governance. So I asked the guy, has crime from the greenway affected your property? He says, they will take whatever they can grab. They took my barbecue. They took my lawnmower. And I said, do your other neighbors have the same problem? And he points to different homes that are his neighbors. The problem is he doesn't have a fence currently because of a permit glitch, he said. But he said that people come off the greenway and they steal things in his yard and his neighbor's yards. They take the bags of cans. And I said, why don't you have a fence? And he said, it's a glitch with permitting. So I said, that's the problem I'm trying to resolve by being here. I don't have a dog in a fight here. I don't have any property along the greenway, but I care about the people with property along the greenway. So they traveled further north. I stopped by a fence, by someone's home, and this woman's back porch is probably 20, 30 feet from the greenway. And she has a solid fence that's chain link, and it has those plastic inserts. She hasn't had a crime problem, but her neighbor has. But she likes her privacy. And as you look along the greenway for safety's sake, if you're looking down, I thought of someone's concern regarding safety, you look down the greenway and on the left-hand side is solid vinyl fencing, and you can see whether there's someone there or not to jump out and get you. On the other side are bushes and trees. If someone's going to try to hurt you, they're not going to come from the fence side because you can see for a long distance who's there. On the other side, you have trees and bushes that people can hide in, and hopefully this never happens, that they attack somebody. So the safety issue, I don't think has merit. But what I do think has merit is people stealing things from homes that they can see. The new changes prohibit you from building that solid security fence or privacy fence. And I want you all to think about yourselves. What if your backyard was at the greenway and you're having a barbecue with your family or the kids are out there playing and everyone can see what you're doing? You can have a 3-rail fence, like a cow fence. How much time do I have?
Yeah, you're 4 minutes, 15 seconds.
Okay. I would ask you to ask the chief of police to talk about this issue also. But the bottom line is, if this passes, can you build a solid fence at Coleman Creek Estates that I mentioned? And you cannot. People have to be able to see your backyard. They have to be able to, they can go through the fencing. They can go over a 3-foot fence, and it isn't for maybe safety of personnel, but safety of property. Maintain the code the way it is with the change, pass this with the changes as discussed. That's my ask. It's not going to hurt anything. There's no downside, and it maintains the way it is now.
That's fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Call up the chief.
All right. And so there's no one here to oppose, as we've had all the positives, no negatives. And so we're back to closing the hearing at this time. And that means we are down to
if I may, just for the record, while the record's open so that I can just.
All right, you want to summarize it?
Yeah, so this is what we dealt with at Planning Commission. And on the private side as well with citizens as well, two sides to both issues or two sides to both options. And again, for consideration purposes, we're not telling people that they can't have their existing fence. What we're telling people are, if you're going to develop commercially or residentially on the greenway, you have to design your project in such a way that if you don't want to be required to put that certain type of fence up, then put your building against the property or do something else from a design standpoint that gives you the security that you need. Again, with that, there are other things that will impact what type of fence you can have. The chain link fences on Coleman Creek, on anywhere the Bear Creek Greenway are not allowed, period, because they're in the floodway. The mobile home park at Coleman Creek Estates, same thing. Fences in the floodway are not a good thing. So there are other, regulations that apply that also have impact on what can be allowed and what can't be allowed. So I will leave it at that. And I think that if the council wants to have some discussion on this and not move the ordinance forward, that is totally up to the council to do. I think there will be some deliberation. It's probably a good idea so that you have a better conversation than what you will have in 4 minutes. Because it has been an issue of, if there were any issues in the zoning code amendment, it was that and maybe the EV chargers initially. So I'll leave it with that.
Okay, great. Okay, at that point, now we do close the public hearing. And so is there any discussion that we'd like to have before I ask for a motion? Yes, Mr. Dixon.
Well, I just had a thought, you put in a smaller fence, but then I suppose you can put in a vegetation barrier that would go behind the fence and provide the privacy that you're thinking of. I don't know. Anyway.
I think also in this, the livability of the citizen versus that and Mr. Lez's points where you can see the line of sight, you would see fencing or if there was vegetation in the way. But one of the things, and someone come before council and brought this to us a couple of years ago that they had neighbors that kept being a problem with looking into their yard, looking at them and asked for a variance on our fencing height. But I think that too, that for someone to live in their backyard and have not be watched so much, the voyeurism could be a problem too in that. And so I just feel heavily that it leans more towards the homeowner. Business development, not so much, but homeowner does feel that way. So.
Any other comments?
I'd rather have more time to discuss and think about this.
You need more time?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
We move to like.
You can, make a motion at this point because.
Yeah.
I'm looking, if there's no more discussion, I'm looking for a motion.
So if we motion with the changes, if we approve it as written with the fence amendment, we could do that too, depending on what passes.
You want to table it for now?
Oh,
I would prefer to table it, but if you want to.
But for what do you want to do though? In the meantime, if you table it, what do you want? What are you looking for? Yes.
Wanted to continue the meeting. We just say I would like to continue the meeting to such and such a date. Keep the matter open for deliberation.
Okay.
And I would just say for deliberation only at this point, because you've closed the public hearing and no more written testimony.
So it's just our deliberation. So you want to keep it open until the next city council meeting?
Yeah.
All right.
At this point, it would be my recommendation. It's not where I was targeting today, but I think given the fact that you're going to have more than a 1 minute long conversation,
right?
And it needs it.
I'll make another motion to move past 9:30.
Okay.
Since we're coming up.
Do I have a second for?
I would second it.
All right, we need a roll call.
Counselor Cambers?
Yes.
Counselor Suetos?
Yes.
Counselor Vermillion,
Yes.
Counselor Dixon.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
All right, thank you. So what you're saying is that you want to.
I'd rather have discussion about it further on another meeting.
On another meeting, not tonight. Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have specific questions that you want to submit to the staff or you?
Not at this
no,
moment.
Not at this moment. Okay.
Well, and just procedurally, this will be deliberation for the council, which you can ask staff questions, but it should be in the public forum.
Right. Yeah, I want to make sure if you have them, that you bring them to the next meeting. That's what I meant. Yeah.
So you're making a motion,
Oh, okay. Making a
Yeah.
motion.
and the motion is to continue the hearing to the next, not the hearing, excuse me, the deliberations on this ordinance to the next regular city council meeting,
Yes.
which is on
June
June 2nd.
June 7th, second, sorry.
Okay, so I make a motion to move this to deliberation to June 2nd. Is that close enough?
That's close enough.
Thank you very much.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Sure.
Counselor Cambrose,
Yes.
Counselor Suetos.
Yes.
Counselor Vermillion.
Yes.
And Counselor Dixon.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much. So be it. All right. We will move on to number 9, staff reports, city attorney. No, nothing. Okay. Mrs. Swanson.
I could take an hour, but I'm just gonna mention one thing that we're pretty proud of. It's having the fire camera installed up on the eastern side of the community at the tank there. And it's gonna have a lot of AI technology in terms of, being able to see smoke or, have smoke or heat, kind of thing. So, and it has a great 180 plus view of not only Phoenix, but North Phoenix, Talent, in along the I-5. So that was a great accomplishment. The team really came together and worked on that for some time now. These things don't happen overnight. And so I was real proud of that occurring. So got a lot of other things, but I think we can try to update maybe through emails and stuff like that. Looking forward to the next meeting on the 2nd. And as we mentioned, the budget and talking about scheduling ahead of that. This kind of thing. So thanks.
Community development, anything? Nothing. All right. Not at this point. All right.
Nothing good.
All right. We'll continue.
Eric, thank you for all that work on the cameras like that.
Yeah.
That is so good. Is that also public access?
Yeah, so all the agencies have obviously access to it as well as the public. And I think if not, we'll send another email to give you the link.
Good.
So
Yeah, I did
Ready
see
to
that.
go for this fire season.
Yeah,
That's
ready to go.
That's critical.
I am going to read a letter from Councilor Shane Holtz. Dear Mayor Muehlhofer, members of council, city staff, and Phoenix residents, please accept this statement as my formal resignation from my position as city councilor for the city of Phoenix effective June 16th due to my upcoming relocation out of state. Serving the residents of Phoenix has been a profound honor. Over the past 2 years, I've had the privilege to work alongside dedicated colleagues and community members to advance initiatives that have positively impacted our city. While this move is a significant step for me, leaving this role in the community I've come to cherish is bittersweet. I am confident that the council will continue to lead Phoenix towards a prosperous future. To the residents of Phoenix, thank you for your trust, support, and engagement. It has been an incredible experience to serve this vibrant and resilient community. I will carry the lessons and memories of this chapter with me, and Phoenix will always hold a special place in my heart. Although I am stepping away from my position, I remain deeply invested in the success of our city and look forward to following its continued growth and accomplishments from afar. I'm committed to ensuing a smooth transition and am available to assist in any way during this period. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Sincerely, Jillian Shane Holtz. Yeah.
Were you going to talk about?
Yeah, I
succession?
I think going forward, we need to come up with probably a schedule to kind of allow for advertising the vacancy and then, having interviews like we normally do. I've outlined a couple different options at the next two meetings. I think barring any kind of issue, I think that if we want to do it quicker, I think we can have it done by the June 15th meeting and then make it effective the 16th. That way Jillian can participate in the meeting, participate in the discussion of who we appoint, and then make that appointment effective the next day.
Anyone have any problems with that at all? No. Okay, great. Let's
We'll move ahead with that.
Thank you.
I'll work with Doug to make sure we're on solid ground, but I think that's the plan. All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Nicole?
No, I have nothing to say.
Well, I do have a report from Rogue Valley Area Committee on Transportation. And I'll keep it brief, but there was real concern about the ODOT's budget, and it's not going to be adequate to maintain infrastructure. So they're still fiddling with that, I think, in Salem. But there's also a proposal to establish a 26-member subcommittee that will identify, compile, and prioritize projects in Jackson County that require progress from ODOT. So we'll have a list of projects that we can give them, and then they can prioritize them at their end. And there's still about 88 ADA ramps that have to be completed in the valley, and that project continues. And there will be some upcoming projects for next year. So it was a good meeting.
Good. Okay. I have nothing. Meeting adjourned.
Not the record.